Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town Board meeting of March 11th, 2025. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sarah, would you start us?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
And if we could remain standing for a moment of silence as we pray for those fighting for our freedoms. And also, it looks like we are on a verge of a peace agreement between, or at least a ceasefire between Russia and the Ukraine. And we pray that that holds and that we are able to move past this this mini war over there and that it doesn't extend.
Can we also mention the Gentile family in the Mount Pleasant district for their daughter lost her battle to neuroblastoma, and they're starting a fundraiser for kindness on behalf of Gia.
Amen. Thank you. All right, normally we don't have any reports to the town, but I do know that Luciana had an important announcement, especially for our parents within the town.
So I just want to let everybody know that March 18th at 9:30 a.m. sharp, so set your alarms. That is the spots for the town camp that open up. I understand how frustrating it is, so set your alarms today that alert you that on the 18th at 9:30 a.m., the spots for the town camp will go on sale. Step-by-step instructions on how to sign up can be found on our town website. So go on to the Parks and Rec portion of the website. That's YorktownNY, one word, .gov, YorktownNY.gov/Parks and Recreation, Parks and Recreation, one word. And general registration will only be held up to March 25th. However, as all parents know, it closes out pretty quickly. So that's all I have. Under 10 seconds.
Thank you so much. Well, no, it wasn't, but that's okay.
Okay.
Very important aspect. All right, so we're going to start with a presentation today. John Bell, representing the Yorktown Grange,
Hey, John.
talking about New York State Maple Weekends.
Good to see you, John.
Good to see you. All right. Yorktown, the town of Yorktown, has the southernmost Grange and the southernmost maple syrup farm in New York State.
That's correct.
And every year, the New York State Maple Syrups Producers Association puts on a maple weekend, or actually weekends, to celebrate our heritage of maple syrup. And it is the last 2 weeks in March, so it's coming up really, really soon. And the Grange, Yorktown Grange, and White Oak Farm, the southernmost producer of maple syrup in New York State, get together to produce one really great maple syrup celebration. At the new Yorktown Grange, we are having pancake breakfast using, obviously, maple syrup from White Oak Farm and bacon and sausage from Hemlock Hill.
It's a yummy day.
Yes, yes. And not only do you can get a breakfast there, we also have because we're the
Bless.
Grange,
God
we
bless.
have animals, goats, chickens.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a hayride, and it's just one really exciting outing with really delicious food, a really nice breakfast. And then afterwards, you can just head a little south to White Oak Farm, and you can see their sugar house, and they'll show a little film, and it's a really nice thing. And especially down at White Oak, not only can you have maple syrup for sale, but he has many other maple syrup products. And if you need to buy maple syrup and can't go down there, we do have maple syrup his maple syrup also for sale at the Grange. It's a really exciting time. We really look forward to it, and we welcome all of you to come. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank
Just a couple questions.
Yes, certainly.
He's still doing local honey?
Yes, he still does the local honey.
Okay, which is great for allergies.
Yes, it is.
Well, that's really it for me. I don't know if you guys have anything.
No, I mean, I'm. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Do you need any volunteers still?
We'll let you know. We're gonna have a meeting Thursday.
Okay.
And then let you know.
John,
All right.
John, I went last year. You guys did a phenomenal job.
Well, thank you.
Did a really good job.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it. So if you have a flyer or something, and you
Just-
could pass it along,
Okay.
I will be
Should
happy.
Should I, would you
Yeah,
like
I could do it.
copies?
I could scan it in. If you have it already in digital format, you could email it to me. But
I can come up here and
yeah,
give
yeah,
it to you.
could
or-
come. Yeah, sure. Come on up. We don't bite.
Anyone else?
Okay, I have to.
Fantastic, and I'm looking forward to seeing Bry at White Oak Farm. He really does a fantastic job there, and he's got all these other products there. And we'll stop by and we'll see. I'll go see him. I usually love this time of year. It's just absolutely wonderful. And I'm looking forward to the bacon from the Grange. To be quite honest.
All right.
You know,
you
John,
there.
if you're back at the mic, I do have one other question.
Certainly.
I remember, I think it was last year, a lot of the local restaurants tried to do like maple syrup geared dishes and drinks. So do they have anything this year that you know of?
That I don't know. I'd be delighted to find out.
All right. So any restaurateur listening in, that's something that was a phenomenal thing last year. I remember having a really, really good Yorktown maple syrup old fashioned.
Yeah.
Which was outstanding. It really, instead of the sugar in there, the little bit of maple syrup made a huge difference. So, any
wonderful.
restaurateur, contact John Bell through the Grange, and let's see what we could do to get some
Absolutely.
great
All
things
right.
on our menus. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
All right, Ken and Sarah, accessory dwelling unit law.
Good evening, Sarah Wilson, Chair of the Community Housing Board, along with Ken Belfer and Maura Gregory, members of the Community Housing Board. We're here tonight to just open up for discussion some proposed revisions to Section 300-38, which covers accessory dwelling units and single-family homes. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So why are we here? Yorktown is a participant in the New York State ADU Plus program. That resolution was adopted January of 2024, and it provides up to $125,000 to homeowners to either legalize existing units or create new units. There was a really neat presentation at the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. I think it was on February 17th or the 21st. Marnie Henriksen from Habitat for Humanity gave a nice presentation on the program, so I encourage, if you haven't seen the video, check it out. It's really good. And information on the program itself is on the Yorktown Community Housing Board website on our webpage. So we have two Yorktown homeowners who are already enrolled in the program, and based on Marnie's conversation, there are only 10 slots remaining in the couple of northern Westchester municipalities. So that's one reason we're here. And the other reason is that when we made a presentation to the town board in August of 2024, there seemed to be consensus that there were probably some amendments that should be made to the town code. It's been in place for a long time. And so we went back, came up with our proposals. We did circulate them, and we met actually with the Zoning Board of Appeals, since they deal with, these applications and renewals all the time, and we got their input as well. Okay, next. So as I mentioned, we circulated it, and we also circulated it to you, Supervisor, and to the town attorney, Adam Rodriguez. And basically, we just have 6 proposed changes to the code. The first one is that we would, currently, ADUs are only allowed on 2 acres or greater properties, and so our recommend.
Just for detached accessory
Okay.
buildings.
Okay.
Got it.
So we want to decrease that minimum to just under 1 acre, which is, it's 40,000 square feet, which is 0.92 of an acre. So that would open it up to additional properties. The second one, I don't know if you want me to cover one and have some feedback, or I'll just go through the 6 and then
Yeah.
we can talk through them. The second one is to eliminate the existing requirement that the unit be on the second story of a detached accessory building. The third one is, right now, the maximum size is 800 square feet, and so we're proposing to increase that to 1,000 square feet. And, you know, the ZBA said it's not unusual to see 1,000 and certainly even larger than that. And also to increase the maximum percent from 33% of the building to 40%, so a minor increase there as well. Fourth, we want to eliminate the requirement that the owner must occupy the larger unit, because you might have a dynamic where, you know, the owner is a single senior, and there may be others, you know, that it would be more appropriate for them to take the larger area of the house. Number 5, for those homeowners that have allowed their ADU permits to expire, to provide, you know, kind of reset the clock and provide an opportunity for them to get back into compliance. And then lastly, provide an amnesty period of up to 1 year to legalize existing ADUs that aren't currently permitted, because again, that would enable those homeowners to participate in the ADU Plus program if they qualify, and it provides the funds for them to get their units up to code if they're not up to code, get out of the shadows, and, you know, get registered appropriately, get assessed for property taxes appropriately, get classified in the tax roll as a single-family house with an accessory. So those are our proposals. The other thing I just wanted to touch on briefly is there's also an opportunity, I learned this as well from the Habitat for Humanity presentation. There's also existing legislation here in New York State that would abate. It's kind of like the 421B in that it would abate the increase in property taxes based on those improvements that you're making to the property for up to 10 years. And it would just require the town to, since it's existing New York State law, to just enact it locally. And Croton has already done that. So we could look at the existing legislation that they have, just change the name, so we don't create a lot of work for our town attorney. So we can just copy and paste. So again, you know, our requests tonight are, you know, that we would move forward with circulating these for comments, get any feedback for additional changes town board might be interested in making, schedule a public hearing, assuming we adopt the recommendation to provide an amnesty period, that we would roll that out, circulate, you know, get the word out to our homeowners. And then you can also consider whether we want to maybe enact that property tax legislation. And that's all I've got. Okay.
I have 2 quick questions, Sarah. That you
And what Ken's handing out is an actual red line of those changes with the verbiage that we're suggesting, as well as a copy of that presentation.
So Sarah, I have like two quick questions that you could probably answer.
Presentation in the back of that?
What's that?
Is the presentation in the back?
Pass it down.
Oh, never mind.
No.
I got it right here.
So one of them is like, let's just say you have 5 acres. How many ADUs can you put on that 5 acres? Is it,
I think it's one.
you know,
It's still only one.
Assuming you have one parcel, it's not subdivided.
yeah.
And maybe you're in a 5-acre zone.
Yeah.
You can only have one accessory dwelling unit
Okay.
per single lot with
So
single family.
that brings into the next one, Ken. Stay there. You can probably answer it. So on the detached, you know, can you make a 2-story detached ADU under, 1,000 feet? You know, I'm just, how you just don't want to approve it and then all of a sudden it's basically bypassing zoning or the planning, so does it stay a ranch? Does it, or what requirements are on that side of it?
So I'm not sure I have all the answers to this, but
Come on, Ken.
first,
And you do too.
I defer to Sarah. No. First of all existing zoning requirements, setback requirements, everything that would apply to the lot still applies.
Okay.
So this does not change any of that.
And the max is 1,000 feet?
On the
Well, it's 800 right now.
It's,
800
yeah,
square feet.
but
Yeah.
the proposed is
Yeah.
1,000, so,
So yeah, in the red line, it's B1 on the first page that deals with the accessory dwelling units in detached accessory buildings, which is I think your question. And so there are different changes there. The first one that we're recommending, we actually were recommending changing it from R180 to R140. After the comments we got from the ZBA, they said use 40,000 square feet because there are a lot of slightly irregular lots rather than R140. So that's why we came up with the 40,000 square feet. But the other part of it, it says, provided that the accessory building complies with all setback and yard requirements of the zone for the main building. Now, what we're deleting from that section, the rest of what you see in red there under B1, is, and that the unit is on the second story of the accessory building. We don't think we should require that. And does not displace or reduce the original accessory building's use. Well, if somebody wants to create a detached garage into an accessory apartment, you're going to displace the use, or, whatever. They have a detached small cottage, or some sort of building, and they want to turn it into a real apartment, and it'll displace the use. We don't think that should be prohibited, as long as it complies with everything else, including the 1,000 square foot max and whatever else applies.
I read through it all. It sounds, very, very logical, but I just sent to those couple questions, because if you had a 5-acre zoning in there, it doesn't say, you're only limited to one.
Right.
You could put 3 back there, like every acre you could have
So to
one.
piggyback on that question.
That is in here, and I'll try to find.
Ken, I believe you.
Yeah, we believe you. To piggyback on that question, if you built even if it's a single story, it was for 1 floor, whatever it is, right? An ADU and it's 1,000 square feet. How many tenants can you have in that 1,000 square feet? Can you split it up and make 2 500 square foot, and have 200 square foot, 500 square foot tenants? It's one tenant only,
One apartment.
one apartment.
One
The
apartment
only thing,
only.
Single family house.
And just-
then
now, I didn't read through this whole thing. That's right. That's fine. I kind of figured that's what you were going to say.
Yeah, I just want to go back
Okay.
for 1 second. Under B9, which is on the second page, number of accessory dwelling units per lot. This is in the existing law. There shall be no more than 1 accessory apartment. So it's very
All right.
clear in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
existing
yeah.
law, per lot.
Now, the only thing is, I didn't read through this whole thing yet, but I would like something in the new law that says that the detached accessory dwelling unit has to match, kind of like, I would say, the siding and the colors. So this way we don't get like these like kind of weird structures that people want to get creative on, and then it's going to disrupt the look and feel of the neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right now there is
Enter
a
Sarah.
section B4 called architectural treatment, and I don't think it goes as far as what your suggestion
And I think it
suggesting,
ought
and
to.
I think I think that's a good suggestion.
Although it's
It,
short.
there's some loose language in there about it, but
Just
it's
tighten
not.
it.
I don't think it's firm enough.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, I did read that part of it.
Yeah.
Could you also, to piggyback onto what Sergio said, could you explain how the ZBA, which has long experience doing this, because we've had accessory units, I think, in the code since the 1980s, so this is nothing new. The protections within the existing code that you're not changing that guarantee preserving the character of the neighborhood, that the ZBA, what it will look at, what it will be concerned, and why this isn't automatic, but it's a special permit that has to be renewed every 3 years.
It's every 3
And
years.
the concern about additional parking, traffic, the entranceway, and the adherence of the building.
Yep.
That there is this concern.
Right, so, the very start of the ADU section of the town code talks about it's the intent that neighborhoods zoned as single-family primarily maintain their single-family character. And then when you're considering an application, specifically the zoning board, they need to apply standards that are spelled out in the law. The use will not restrict the use of adjacent properties. It will not adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. They list criteria that the zoning board needs to consider, including impact on neighboring property values, any traffic generation by the proposed use, and if the proposed use in any way endangers health, safety, general welfare of the community. So they are dealing with that. This is one of the most frequent, I think, things that the zoning board deals with is the people who are coming in for their initial permit or for a renewal. The public has the opportunity to comment, and that's why it's only a 3-year permit, right? So that there's the opportunity, if there is some issue, that can be dealt with, and it gets re-inspected. Right, the building inspector is there, making sure that there's, everything's in good order.
Who do you think takes advantage of this? Who are the people who would benefit from this?
Well, this is enabling homeowners here in Yorktown to remain in their home. It's going to provide an additional source of income, and it enables them to stay on their existing property lot.
Also, it helps
may
with
also-
the diversity of our housing, which helps.
Yeah,
We're in
absolutely.
everybody knows we're in a shortage.
Right,
So-
and
so
and
search.
an accessory apartment, an accessory dwelling is a whole. It's just another option, another tool in the toolbox when you're considering looking at rental properties, looking at for sale properties, houses and apartments.
I envision, a scenario where a couple moved to Yorktown many years ago, raised their kids here,
Yeah,
and now their kids want to come back to Yorktown. Maybe they give up their house and they build a 1,000 square foot. They get to see their grandchildren
Yeah.
grow up. They probably argue with their in-laws, that kind of a thing. Unfortunately, that too. But I think it could enable something like that in a very positive way.
yeah. I've looked at, I went back through the minutes of the zoning board meetings to get a sense of some of the, real life scenarios that come through. And it's, the family who's now their, 98-year-old parent,
Parents did, yeah.
is going to move in, and they're creating a unit for that. In another case, one of the examples we heard about at the Senior Citizens Advisory Board meeting was, a family who has a daughter with some disability, and they're creating a unit for her so she has some independence, but yet is
She's close
to the-
by.
yeah. Families moving up from down south, and they want to be able to provide an opportunity for them. So lots of real life kind of scenarios.
actually, I should say I'm liaison to the Housing Board, but I want to thank you for your work on this. I think that you've done an outstanding job, and I'd like to see this board refer the red line version, have Adam put the red line version into local law format, and we refer it out. You've already done some of the important work in meeting with the zoning board, and you've incorporated their concerns and their experience and expertise into these changes, so we can move ahead. Because I heard Marnie's comments at the senior board, and that group Habitat has a certain amount of money from a state grant. So it's first come, first serve, and they are basically allotting the money, which is a maximum of $125,000. We'd like to take advantage of that, I think, for our people here.
I would love to, Susan, as well, but I did have some questions that I think garners maybe a little more work. So I know I forwarded out some comments from Michael Grace, who years ago he and I were talking about this as a possibility, and he had quite a few. Were you able to look through those, incorporate any? Because I noticed he spoke about that the current law really focuses on like putting something above a garage or refurbishing something that may be more expensive than building from scratch to get it to code. There were some things on the size. There were some things on the lot size. I think he was looking at 30,000 square foot lot with a 600 square foot footprint. And I'm going to also want John Taggart to come up and make some comments based on that before we go, on all of this before we go anywhere to that. But it is something I'd love to see get done and quickly. But Ken?
Yeah, I've been out of town until last night.
I
and
know.
Just
Did you have fun, by the way?
a lot.
Good.
Yes.
Where'd you go?
Lake Placid,
Look at you.
snowshoeing and cross-country skiing, and there was a lot of snow there.
You don't have
It
to
was
answer those
snowing the whole
questions.
time.
Sounds wonderful. No, I want to live vicariously.
That's my excuse for not fully reviewing that. But I took a quick look through it. It seemed to me like it opened up one big Pandora's box that might be a little bigger than what we're trying to do here and might take a much longer time. And that was the question of new construction of a brand new accessory structure on an existing lot, and then a lot of the regulations about what size lot should you allow just a totally new construction of an detached accessory building.
But
on
isn't that what
when
we're
there
talking
is
about?
none currently. No, this
This is if you have a detached garage
yes,
that's
this
existing. Is
this
that what you envision?
Existing detached structure. The current law allows an existing detached structure and under certain conditions. We're trying to liberalize the conditions somewhat, not require that if you have something, you have to then put a second story on it. There are changes we're trying to make to liberalize the existing conditions that are in here.
Very modestly.
But we don't change the fact that, you have to have the detached accessory structure.
I mean, I kind of like the idea that if you had the opportunity and you had the space and you wanted to add a separate structure from scratch, I think that would broaden the law. It would have to be done right, and maybe it'll take
Yes.
another week or two, but I want to look at this a little more thoroughly. I want to look at the architectural part. I know it's in there already, but it looks like it's very loose. But I don't want this to be, we're talking about this 3 years from now.
Yeah,
I want this,
if we were talking a week or two, I'd be all in favor of considering that additional aspect of new construction on an existing lot.
Supervisor, can I ask a question?
yeah.
Whether-
Yes, Dave, go on.
Quick question for you. My wife and I are considering downsizing, okay? We're looking at, what's that?
ADU.
No, no, I don't want my daughters living there. That being said, my question is, we're looking at 1,000, 1,100 square foot homes that have 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Okay, now bear in mind, I'm a guy that's driving around at 4 a.m. when everybody's home, and I'm seeing 5 cars in houses that are that size. A lot of times they're ending up on the road because they have nowhere to park. So who makes the determination that you could put in a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, 2 bathrooms? Now you're talking a lot more people, a lot more traffic, a lot more cars. So where does that fall in the approval process?
Well, I mean, the zoning board obviously has jurisdiction over that. I think the definition of an additional unit is that there be a kitchen. Beyond that,
But no restrictions with respect to the number of bedrooms,
Yes,
which
there are.
indicates
That's in the existing law in section B6 bedrooms. There shall be a maximum of 2 bedrooms in the accessory unit.
bathrooms. Does it mention bathrooms?
It does not mention bathrooms.
Okay.
But a maximum of 2 bedrooms is what's in the legislation.
And
the
there's-
other, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm sorry. This is how my brain works, though. I apologize. It's a little skittery. The question becomes, who's going to make the determination as to parking?
The zoning
Because
board.
I'm already dealing with cars in the middle of snowstorms, parked on the roads, and are getting hit by my plows. All right, and unfortunately, they don't get reimbursed because the state law says that while we're involved in snow operations and somebody's parked on our road, if my plow totals that car, they don't get a penny, and it breaks my heart. But adding more cars to the mix on smaller lots, which is what's being proposed, going from 800 to 1,000 feet and dropping the 33% to 40%, I think it was.
Yes.
Who would make the determination on parking?
So it was interesting because at the ZBA meeting we attended, one of the people there applying for a renewal of a permit, the discussion became around the parking. So I understand that. Once again, going to the existing law, B7, parking, 1 1/2 off-street spaces, I don't know how you do a half space,
I know me either.
shall be provided for each unit, provided that the existing number of bedrooms is not increased. If the existing number of bedrooms is increased, the zoning board may require additional off-street spaces. That's the way the language, in other words, if you had a 6-bedroom house and the people said, well, we're gonna reduce our part of it to a 4-bedroom and have a 2-bedroom additional thing, that's not increasing the total number
How
of
could
bedrooms.
they-
But this is the guidance in the law that the zoning board of appeals has.
And you just said that there wouldn't be more than 2 units, so then isn't that contradictory to say if the number of bedrooms are increased?
Well, you can.
I'm just lost.
You can do an addition, an extension on a house to add an accessory apartment. And so you can have a 4-bedroom house and then they have an extension with 2 bedrooms or 1 bedroom. It's a maximum of 2. So when they're adding bedrooms to the existing structure, so they have to add 1.5 off-street spaces for each, for each unit. If they're not increasing the bedrooms, and if they're increasing the number of bedrooms in the existing structure, then additional off-street spaces may be required. That's the way the law reads now.
Yeah,
that's one of the most popular question that the zoning board seem to be asking people, and they visit, right? They look at the properties, and that's a real consideration because that impacts just, as we were reading in terms of what the zoning board needs to consider, traffic generation by the proposed use is one of those key criteria that the ZBA has to evaluate.
All right.
Thank you.
Ed, I just want to.
But quite frankly, I mean, there are houses in our neighborhood, Dave, that, it's all one family. But it's 3 generations of family members because they can't afford a place to live. And so you've got, numerous driving members of one family, and everybody has a car these days. And you see how full the driveways are. So, and that's without an ADU.
Just in further answer to you, Sergio, there are some other things in there about the architectural treatment. One of them is about to maintain the single-family character where the entrance is to an accessory unit, because they don't want to have 2 entrances in the front of the building. But in another section, C3, it says, in case of extensive changes to the exterior of the existing structure, the zoning board may refer the application to ABACA for its review and recommendation. So that's also in
In the event
My
that they
question-
can't be direct.
My
No.
question was more. I'm sorry, Lou. You
No, I'm saying.
my question was more toward like a new construction detached ADU, where look, if I'm adding, if I'm extending my house, to add an ADU, and the house is the 3/4 sided already. I'm not going to put like, ugly siding. It's going to match the siding. I was more concerned about like a detached single, ADU that's new construction. Like I definitely don't want something that doesn't match the character of the house. Now, I understand the language. The language is very loose. I don't understand what that means. It matches the character. That could mean anything. I mean, nowadays, the written word is, it needs to be a little more. I think it needs to be tighter for me.
Ed, you brought up some concerns that Michael Grace had.
No, not concerns. He actually wanted to expand upon this and make it a little more liberal in how we can increase housing stock, because I've sat up here 100 times and said that our kids can't afford to move back to Yorktown, and this is an opportunity to give affordability not only for kids but even maybe for parents, as was brought up, and even for giving people a way to generate some additional income that can keep them in their house.
Yeah, but I think the issue with Michael Grace is many years ago at the planning board, and maybe John has better memory than I do, he wanted to have, I believe it was to construct something new because he has an oversized lot. And he applied to the zoning board. It was referred to the planning board, and the planning board did not support the application. So what he was talking about was not an ADU, which is what the housing board is recommending in modifying this existing law. What Michael Grace wanted was something very different. If the town board, and that gets to your point
Well,
about,
no,
we're
Susan-
talking about somebody has an existing garage,
Right.
already there, and they're converting it to an ADU. We're not talking about something new, and I think that's what Michael Grace
Well, I
wanted.
think-
and he eventually, I think, just dropped his
Right.
application
I
to the
think
zoning
that-
board.
I think you're right in what the want was. I just think that you're thinking inside a box what the definition of an ADU is. And
No,
I
an
think-
ADU is an accessory dwelling. If you want to change the zoning law to say that on a lot of a certain size, a 2-acre lot, you can allow 2 residences, that's
No,
up to
but-
this board to decide if they want to do that.
But the ADU is defined with size, with the amount of people. So here's the thing: if I have an old barn on my property, and I have an oversized lot, and I go in and refurbish it and try to make it a habitable residence for someone that I could rent it out to, or that my daughter could move into, I might spend more money trying to get that to code than to do like a tiny house or a house dropped right on. And it's a very good point. Why would we say we want to try to expand the housing stock, but we're going to make it harder and more expensive for you? And I think that's a valid point, because the whole purpose of what I think that the housing board wants and what they're in favor of is how can we make it affordable, not how can we regulate it so it's impossible. And I think that's a huge question that needs to be answered, and that's why I'd like John to come up, because I know he's had some thoughts on this. He and I had a short conversation earlier, and he had some interesting points that sort of made me have to go back and think and look at it. And I think that's
Well, let me say,
I
Mark-
looked at the suggestions, and I'm not sure why he had why it's relevant that he had a piece of property 15 years ago and he wanted to expand on it. Who knows if he still wants to do it? I'm not sure why that's even relevant to bring up or say or allude
Well,
to. Or
because
hold on
Ed
a
brought
second.
it up.
1 second, please. And so, but what he did do is he provided some suggestions, and take or leave some of them, hate all of them. Maybe it shapes the new law, and it adds to the fact that we're providing more housing stock, we're providing more opportunity for the people in Yorktown to live here, to stay here, to play here, to do all of that. I'm not sure why it's relevant what he was thinking, 15 years ago, and to try to attack him in a
not.
weird way. I don't
So
understand that.
Susan, the reason I brought it up is because I've been talking about this for years. I think the people like Ken, I think you've heard me talk about it, Maura, and I think that we need to have something. And we had a conversation. I did not remember he was actually looking to do something in the past, but it was relevant in the fact that it was something that someone with a lot of institutional knowledge about our town had that idea. I would ask that of anyone. Matter of fact, Ken, I know I came to you when we were talking about adaptive reuse because of your institutional knowledge. We have a tremendous resource in our residents in the town. And for us to say, I'm not going to use that, means that we're probably some of the dumbest people on earth if we say that. So I want to utilize all the resources we have. I want to talk to the people. And a matter of fact, the reason it stoked in my mind, Ken sent this out to me. And I said, oh, well, Michael had some ideas about this. And I sent actually what Ken had and said, hey, can you do me a favor? Look at this and tell me how this comports to the conversation that we had. And it's got to be at least 9 years ago. It was when I first started on the board.
But these are the things that kind of throw us off topic. So
Yeah.
let's get back
Well,
on
the-
track with looking at the law and looking at the suggestions.
Agree.
And not get off this tangent here that we're on right about now. So I think Ed wants
Sarah?
us to
Yeah,
go
I
on.
just wanted one other point, because you raised a legitimate concern about the cost of creating the ADU. And just as a point of fact, Marnie, the Habitat, person in charge of this, made a point of saying that one of the two people in Yorktown who is part of this program, the $125,000 grant covers everything, and that the homeowner, I think you watched it, is not going to have to pay anything. So it all depends. Okay, this is
But
That
there
also
are
means
10
that
to
if they don't have
hold
a
on, guys.
grant, they have to
There are
pay that.
10 to 12 grants left in Westchester. Let's get through
move.
this so we can try to get on top
Yeah,
of it by then.
absolutely.
So, Sarah, you had one more comment, and then I wanted John to.
Yeah, I was just going to recommend. I mean, I saw your email as well. I was working all day, so I haven't had a chance to digest it.
Not a
and
problem.
Certainly not circulated amongst the
Housing
community
board.
housing board members. And I do tend to agree with Ken that this could open up a much broader discussion, and maybe the simplest, what we'd appreciate is maybe we can move forward with these relatively minor changes, get the law updated, and then perhaps open up this discussion about creating new units on, or building new buildings on these properties as a separate conversation. But at least we can immediately start to move forward with some of the other elements, because I think it would take more than a week to probably properly.
Well, what I'd like to see if there are any
Circulate this.
easy things that we could incorporate.
Yeah, and I also want to
That
ask Adam. I agree with the asks, and I also agree with the tightening them, like making the descriptions more said, so we have an expectation and what's going to be happening. Adam, would you be able to, after speaking with John about what the possibilities are, take the suggestions and the language that was put into the law and tighten it in the areas that Sergio named? What is like property, or what is the entrance and the means of ingress or egress? What's 1.5 cars? Like, maybe there's a way where we can help come up together with the language.
A lot of these might already be defined in the existing law, too.
Well, I was going to
Correct.
say that since we're not talking about new building, the existing structures, the
Are there.
existing house, they're already there. So it really becomes more of an issue when you're talking about building something new, and does that align with what's currently on
They
the
don't all
property?
comply.
John?
So I'm with you, Sarah. Well, let's just take a look, and hash it out a little more. I
So,
think.
John, were you able to hash through all this? I know.
Well,
Can my husband move into my garage?
not, yes, of course.
Don't say it out loud.
Not,
You have to delete that time.
not in depth, and I think it should be gone through in depth by everybody. I think a lot of this appears simple on its face, and on its face it is, but I think they all have some serious considerations that go along with them. In particular, I think the discussion has been revolving around the new units, which I would raise a yellow flag on about it. I'm not saying, that it should not happen, but I think it's something that could really get away and change the character of a particular neighborhood very rapidly. And I don't think that Yorktown is willing to have that happen. I would point you to the history of the last 50, 60, 70 years of what Yorktown and the people who have been here in the past have done to create this town, which I think is very desirable in large measure because of their understanding of those issues and their efforts. So, for instance, if I drill down on some things, yeah, you can put in some architectural considerations for the new building, but that doesn't guarantee that necessarily will end up compatible or in keeping with the property that it's on and the architecture that it's on, or even the neighborhood. You can easily say you have to do the same siding and things like that, but sometimes things can be so overly simplistic that they stick out like a sore thumb. And that would start to change the character and quality of a neighborhood, and I think it's very important to keep that in mind. The 1,000 square feet issue did jump out at me. That definitely, as Dave pointed to, is certainly up in the 3-bedroom range. There are some new apartments here in Yorktown that are 850 square feet. They're 2 bedrooms. They're going for $3,200 a month. There's studios around in homes that studio, one bathroom, $1,700 a month, $1,800 a month. So it will add to diversity of housing, but not necessarily will it guarantee affordability. Secondly, in terms of going back to the size of them, even though you may only get 2 bedrooms, why then do you need 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom unit? It's hard to justify that to me, especially when it's going to be a detached unit on a property that was planned as a single-family residential property. So I think there's some really important considerations to think about. They're largely subjective, but I think as important as providing a diversity of housing, which I think we should be doing. But I don't know that having something that is not really tight is going to work out in the long term.
My point
It could
exactly.
go the wrong way, and it could be transformative in the wrong way.
No, it's got to be tight.
It's got to be very tight. I don't know that you need them that large. So there's a lot of discussions in the memo. I think that was from Michael Grace. A lot of points there that I think need to be hashed through. It is an accessory dwelling unit law. If you're putting another house on it, I think you end up raise issues of 2 main uses on the same plot. If it's 1,000 square feet and can support 3 bedrooms, maybe it won't have 3 bedrooms. I think it appears to me that it's no longer really an accessory to the main use any longer, and I think those things are important. They're not readily apparent, but I think they're nonetheless as important as thinking about sizes, parking, traffic, as important as those.
So in the
as
red
well.
line version, that's in there for 1,000, probably shouldn't be then.
Well,
All right,
I'm questioning whether it need be.
Right, all right.
John,
So,
in your experience, what's a typical 2-bedroom square footage? You know, with a comfortable living, a living room, a kitchen, is it 950? Is it 900?
No, the 850 square foot apartments that I'm talking about are pretty spacious and generous. So I think you're in the 750 range to be an accessory dwelling unit. I don't know that we're creating luxury apartments.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean? So
We're
I
not
don't think
there
we need
for
to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
Now,
just to
I-
name that, my house is not that big. My house is like in the 16 to 1,800 square feet, and we are 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, have a playroom and a normal amount, and like I have kids that are all gonna have cars.
So-
So that's like 5 cars on top
So
of that.
I've lived in a 650 square foot apartment, which started out as 1 bedroom, but then the little dining nook was closed off and made a little room for a kid, which
Nursery.
my kid spent her first weeks and months in.
6 of us grew up
650
in
square feet.
Six of us grew up in 1,500 square feet.
My first apartment was 400
So,
square feet.
and then earlier than that, I grew up in
I had
1,100
one
square
pair of
feet.
shoes that I shared with my brother, and we had to walk to school and hop back.
But
I slept in a bed.
Hill both ways.
let's
No,
let's
what
stop
I'm doing is-
measuring.
Yeah, no, I'm illustrating the
Yeah,
size
no,
of
I
the
understand.
apartment. Yeah.
So, all right, so then I will defer to that judgment. I would still like to you know,
Yeah, I think
we'll
it's
move ahead
worthwhile
here,
looking
and I
at,
think
yeah.
then we need to take a second bite of the apple.
Right.
Before, hopefully before I end up leaving office, one way or another, and see if we can look at that and see what we could do to zone it properly and see what we can do about that secondary. But I think that, you know, it's tit for tat, you know, rehabbing a barn or bringing something on.
Yes.
I think that it's a very similar type of proposition.
And I think the 1,000 square feet is the approach of like, my mother needs to live with us, and I have kids. You know, it's not just, we're living longer, knock on wood.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we're living healthier, but we're living longer, and not many people can afford.
If your parents need to live with you, I don't know that they would need the 1,000 square feet.
Right.
Is what I'm
All
saying.
right, so let's.
One thing
No,
I
I
would
meant with
suggest-
me. Like,
of
if I
course.
can't afford it, then it'd be, all of us would be in the 1,000
Yeah.
square feet.
One thing I would recommend is that you get some feedback from the zoning board or the things that they've seen and dealt with, and understand them more intimately than just talking about them.
So that
Get the addresses, visit, drive by, look at the floor plans, understand what they've been doing.
Well, that works with my next thought. Is let's refer this out as is then, for comment. Can I have a motion on that?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then after we get through this process, please hold us to keep looking at it, because I think, once again, there's an opportunity here to help loosen the noose a little bit on our housing market in Yorktown, especially in the family, and maybe that's something that we need to look at. There was one thing in the Michael Grace memo that he spoke about, which was having the definition of the owner. And John, maybe this is something that you might think we need further comment. The owner has to live in the larger structure. But if it's like just me, or just me and my wife, and we want to downsize and we still have that other
You might be able to-
property, I think that's something that hopefully we could look at.
That's in our changes.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
That's one of
Sorry.
our changes, is to eliminate the requirement that the owner live in the larger unit.
Sorry, Ken, I must have
Yeah.
zoned out on you.
I just want to make, we're referring out this red line version.
Correct.
Okay.
Which they kind of have a little bit of an idea about, right?
All right.
Yeah.
The zoning board, I'm saying.
So,
Let's put it out there, see what that's.
thank you for.
Thank you. And by the way, we have vacancies on the Community Housing Board, and so anyone who's interested, this is just one example of what they do. They also provide assistance for people who have want just general information on repairs to their home, on heating aid, all kinds of housing issues, housing counseling, and they can give you referrals to different housing resources. So anyone who's interested, they meet on usually the first Wednesday of the month.
Thank you, Susan. All right.
Thank you for all your work.
Luella Road, new home construction, EAF, SWIP. Dan, you coming up on this too?
Hi.
Good evening. So this is a single-family home, corner of Luella and Quinlan Street. It hasn't been previously developed, so it's been a vacant lot for some time. And because of the amount of disturbance, this is going to be on septic. There's a good amount of bank run that has to go in. There's stormwater that has to go in, so it exceeds the threshold for an administrative permit. And that's why
That's
this
what it's for.
application is before you.
I have a question. Since it's on septic, what are the current, do you have an approval from the Board of Health yet for septic? And did they provide, my understanding is you need some, I think expansion room is the term. So does your site plan show where your expansion area is?
Yeah. No, you have to show that.
I didn't see that on the map.
It just shows one large septic area, but it includes both primary and expansion.
It does, okay, could that be?
The health department, they have a health department approval. They won't approve it without
Okay.
an
Without
expansion.
both, right?
Susan, we're not going to put an additional level of what they need to put on their plans if the health department
All right,
is requested.
I
what they
just,
want.
they answered the question that the expansion area, because usually a 1 acre lot needs more. Do you know of any additional septic issues in the neighborhood? Because they're all on septic. and you're adding another septic. And the soils, from what I read,
run,
the
right?
soils from what I read was Class C, the Paxton soil, which doesn't sound like it's very good for septic
It's a,
drainage.
you know, they had to bring in bank run, and it's also, it's in the watershed.
Yeah.
So what that means is New York City pays Westchester County to witness the percolation test. That isn't the case in other parts of the county. So,
Because it's in the watershed, right?
because it's in the watershed, so somebody's babysitting you while you're doing the percolation test.
And they
to Make sure
passed?
you're not cheating, so.
Did they
it's-
pass?
They wouldn't have a permit otherwise.
Yeah, okay, all right.
I mean, they
Those
have a
are my-
permit.
Those are my questions, all right.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Dan. And,
Thank you.
Is there any questions for the applicant?
well, you seem like you've gone through this.
Came
I
out
know
with
we
what we
saw-
needed.
Yeah. What is your major disturbance on this property? Well, you gotta come.
Septic and house.
Was there
Putting
anything?
up the house.
Was there anything on the driveway on yours with wetland disturbance or no?
No,
Okay. So
no wetlands on the property.
all right. Well, it sounds like engineering pretty much has this.
I don't
Sorry
have
about
any-
your soil.
I mean, I don't have any questions. I mean,
So
they
you're
have
not-
their permit.
is there any other
Straightforward.
questions,
You guys got it.
Susan?
No, I was just concerned about the
Yeah.
septic.
Yep.
Because they're not in the area,
And it's not cheap, so,
Yep. So can I have a motion to refer this out? for
Motion.
comment?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a good one.
and thank you for bringing it to us. Thanks, Dan.
All right.
Hey.
Mr. Paganelli, snow districts.
Judge Paganelli, to you.
Okay.
Oh, take it easy.
I was his law clerk.
he was my law clerk. Okay, so this is a rather convoluted situation with what was repealed and is still on the code, and what we believe was repealed, but is still on the code, or was not repealed. It's really quite the quagmire, if you will.
We're gonna fix it. Don't worry.
Okay,
Giggity, giggity.
so here's what we have. And the reason we're bringing this up is in 2011, a snow removal district map was created. Okay, now traditionally, the only need for special districts would be for taxing. Okay, that's my takeaway on it. I could be wrong. But the issue we have now is that we have some property managers, okay, in condominium complexes that are saying since they're not in the snow removal district, which did not encompass every sidewalk in Yorktown, all right, that they're not responsible for maintaining the sidewalks. Now, with respect to sidewalks, I got off the phone with Rich Fawn today because I was questioning how they deal with it, because Greenberg is very similar to us. In Greenberg, actually, if your sidewalk in front of your home needs repair, it's the homeowner's responsibility. So certainly we don't want to do that, put that on the homeowners. But that being said, snow removal districts needs to go. There's no purpose to it. The law that was put in place, basically, Section 21610 said sidewalk maintenance as follows. It shall be the duty of the owner and occupant jointly of every parcel of real estate adjoining to a public sidewalk, notwithstanding whether the parcel of real estate is occupied by a structure, to keep all adjoining sidewalks free from snow and ice for the full width of the sidewalk. Part A, snow and this needs to be redone also. Snow and ice shall be removed within 24 hours after precipitation event has concluded. Sidewalks abutting a commercial establishment or parking lot shall be kept free and clear of snow and ice. And now this is the part that's totally absurd. Between the hours of 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Okay, now people say, well, that's when everybody is using commercial buildings. I go
Not
to
necessarily
the
legally.
banks, right? I go to game day. I go to the sushi bar. I go to Edwin's when people are going there at 6 in the morning to get breakfast. So are we saying, in essence, you only need to make sure our residents are safe between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m.? So that, I don't know how that ever found its way in there.
Well, and also some of the commercial establishments don't operate 7 days a week.
Correct.
6 to 9.
So I think we go simpler the better, as it's your responsibility to keep the sidewalks free from snow and ice. And the rest of the stuff is as it should be. The only question would become on section 2, where it says penalties for offenses is hereby amended by being renumbered section 21611,
Yeah, where's that?
which, well, we have 21611.
I know it now. Where is it?
216.
Well, I want to make sure that what we're referring to exists. No,
Yeah, I
this
can't
says,
find it.
this here says,
Oh.
penalties for offenses.
Oh, that's there, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, but I got
21611.
250-34.
No, that's
Okay.
the old one. That's the 1999 law you're looking at, right?
All right, so that's what I'm looking to do, clean this up, make sure everybody, we're not, we're not picking on specific residents to maintain their sidewalks when other people are getting away with it.
I think basically what we have to do is repeal the one that said sidewalks had to be, all sidewalks had to be cleared, okay? That was repealed in 2011, okay? But it was still on our books. So now we have two contradictory laws on our books. We have the 216 that says it's a responsibility, let's say, of those condo managers,
Well,
and
no,
we
it's
have the
saying-
snow districts.
It's saying
I-
216 was amended.
It was repealed in 2011, but it still shows up on our books.
Oh, I see.
But
on
it,
the books.
it says here, local law 15 of the year 2011, to repeal, to repeal.
It repealed,
So-
it repealed it, but it, for some reason, going back in time,
Folks, we're gonna
it
clean it
stayed
up.
on our books. Okay, I think what this town wants
Big
is,
John.
is the 21610 with some possible modifications.
I think we
It
need a
doesn't
new
want
one.
the snow district one.
Correct.
right? So I think we have
I
to.
think Dave said that.
We're on the same page.
Yes, that's what I said.
I think Dave said
we
that
have
already.
to reenact.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all we have to do.
I think we should repeal all of it and start over before the snow comes back.
I don't think they're contradictory. I think there was exemptions that were made by an outcry of some residents. That's what happened.
Oh, I remember that. I was
Oh, I'm
supervisor.
sure you
I
did.
remember
If you think
that.
back on it, I'm sure you.
So then why, let me ask you this, John, then why were snow districts created and they weren't encompassing all sidewalks? Was that selective enforcement? Or was that just, let's give these guys a break? I mean, tell me about it,
Yes, it was.
because that's how I'm looking at it.
I
Well,
would advise.
that's a.
to
that's
Don't
a-
answer that
that's a-
question.
That's
not
a,
answer
Yeah.
that question.
That's an
John,
interesting way to look at it.
John.
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay,
What I'm
good.
going to tell you is that we went out and looked at sidewalks around town in certain areas, and there were a number. It was based on a number of them were either very small or very unused, in very bad repair. Those were the ones that were exempted out. Do I think that it was necessarily, the greatest law that was ever written? No, I do not. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Why don't we
That's
enforce-
what you had before, and
John, but why don't we enforce, before the snow comes, fix the sidewalk so it can be shoveled?
we got to do
We
it.
have to do
Yeah, I
that.
think
We
we
have-
gotta do that. That's what we
No,
need
no,
to start
we
with.
have to
Wow.
fix.
We have
It's
to
us
fix it. We have to fix them.
No, but
No.
we can go fix it then,
We-
unless
At
it's
the
owned by
town
the,
expense.
if it's owned, but, okay, but I'm sorry, if it's our expense or not our
Also
expense.
town liability.
Exactly, we should be fixing them, but also if it's, I don't know, when I owned commercial spaces and worked, there was a few feet of the sidewalk, I was responsible for it.
That's-
I had to pour it, the whole thing.
That's the way it is.
I've seen sidewalk in
That's the
front
way
of
it is
commercial
in
places.
every major city and almost every town in Westchester County. It's the responsibility, it's in Yonkers, it's in White Plains, it's
in the Bronx.
It's in the Bronx,
Mount
it's in Mount
Pleasant.
Vernon, all right? The homeowner or adjacent property owner is responsible for repairing cracked and broken sidewalks.
I mean, I used to live because the concrete used to look different, because what
But
was
I
it?
don't think that anybody, to be honest with you, anybody wants to burden a specific homeowner with that additional expense.
I know, but we hear about walkability, and we hear about the safety of, being ADA compliant and accessibility and all this other stuff. We need to, either we put it in, or there's a law where you
So-
must maintain it, but it shouldn't be that we don't plow it or shovel it because it's broken.
I think we're talking about
Well-
a couple different things. Hold on a second, John.
Yeah.
So we're conflating the fact that there's commercial sidewalks and that there are residential.
So
And what
commercial should automatically
what
done.
David is saying is that some of this residential sidewalks are in bad shape, and we'd be throwing that on the homeowner, which might not be the best thing because the town probably put them down. There's some that are done in blacktop. There's
Yes.
some that are done in
But
concrete.
we as a town
There's some-
can
let me
opt
let me
to
let
pay
me
for the-
finish, please. So we have the commercial zone right now in the middle of town that John's working on finding a surveyor, and we have $1 million put aside for streetscaping. And we're trying to get the streetscaping because those are our responsibilities, and it attacks everything you said about walkability, safety, and being in the town. it's a little hard with a 40 square mile town to go around to every sidewalk in front of everyone's house and get that repaired on the tax dollars dime, because we would be spending 2 or 3 years of budgetary money trying to repair all that.
And
So-
we at Highway have already undertaken sidewalk repairs. We've done London by the ball field next to 132.
Right.
We've done
That was an
London.
asphalt one.
Right. Well, and that's, and that goes back to years before John was here, when these developments were put in, whomever approved asphalt sidewalks.
Crazy.
It's bizarre to me, and it was done a couple of administrations ago. They did right here on Underhill Avenue, going up.
It was
I mean,
cheap.
instead of just using concrete like it's supposed to
Well,
be.
look at
It was
the
already-
look at the
it was already
difference.
asphalt.
Look
That's
at the
what it is.
difference
No, I
in
don't think
concrete.
it
Take a
was.
look at
It
East
was. I
Main
lived
Street.
there.
That's been there for probably 75 years and is still functional.
should have been corrected.
Has certainly we've done repairs. We've cut out sections and stuff where it's become an issue. But
Well, I do think
the longevity is like night and day.
So whether we're talking about residential, commercial, there's plenty of commercial sidewalks in front of commercial properties that are not in good shape. We
right.
should
Yes,
be
and
hammering
that-
those then.
and honestly-
there's no reason for them not to be in good shape.
And honestly, a couple of years ago, we had a big press conference out at Downing and Commerce Street saying we were going to take the money that supervisor's referring to now and put that I believe that was federal money, if I'm not incorrect. All right, because I stood there and said, people said, well, why aren't you paving the road? I said, it's like putting lipstick on a pig.
Right, 'cause I'm gonna
I
have to
said, I'm
cut
not
it
paving
open.
this road until the sidewalks and the curbs are done, period.
But I don't
So-
think our streetscape should money should go to commercial properties.
It's not commercial.
Well,
Go to
It's
our
not-
residentials.
It's town property.
All
Or town
sidewalks
property.
are town property. We're talking about the responsibility not for repair, but for maintenance during snow and ice.
Let's just
That-
move ahead on the snow thing.
So Dave, can you work with Adam,
Yes.
figure out the repeal, figure out the red line on the new law?
Okay.
It doesn't sound like it's very complicated.
No.
And let's try to get this, so if we could do it next week, we could put it out to referral. If not, by the first meeting in April, which is your day,
Okay.
April 1st. And
I'll
and
wear my jester hat.
There you go.
Can I ask that you would direct the, I know, and she won't like this, the town clerk to please schedule a public hearing, and we'll guarantee you have the reconstituted
Your
laws.
local law needs to be referred out first. So as soon as you have that document to the town clerk, she will refer it out.
Okay, but then,
Public hearing.
I
Town clerk, the
can't have a
third
public,
person.
I can't have a public hearing until I have something referred.
that's not, would you mind?
It's like Seinfeld.
Oh,
George is getting
what were you
upset.
Saying authorize Diana to
Cre-
refer it out tonight.
He was
refer-
hoping that the public
oh,
hearing would make us
refer
make
it
sure.
out tonight.
Okay.
And then once, what is the normal time frame? And it's not that this is so pressing, because I'm pretty much sure we're done with snow. But that being said,
From your mouth
what
to
is the
God's
time
ears.
frame from when we refer it out? And we experience this with local laws as well when we try to create stop signs and stuff. What is the time frame from when we refer it out to you have all the referrals back and you could set a date for a public hearing?
That all depends on when we receive the proposed local law from your town attorney.
Okay. All right.
Clock starts.
All right, let's get look, guys. Let's, come on.
Can we get
let's
the
get the
local law
local law
next
and
week?
then we'll refer it out.
And let me,
We'll
let
see.
me,
When we get it, we get
while
it.
I have the microphone,
I'm gonna take it away
let
from you.
me, no, you have to fight me for it. Don't send Patrick over. He's bigger than me. That being said, what you and I had discussed with Rob Rohr, we are working towards, again, the four-way stop at Quinlan and London Road. So we are just tightening up some things. Also, we are creating it wouldn't be a law, it would be a set of criteria for speed bumps. In other words, everybody calls for speed bumps. So it's so easy to call, and then we all jump through hoops. Now there'll be a set criteria that says, okay, you can't have more than a 5% grade. You can't have this. You can't have that. You can't have it. It's got to be this much traffic. It can't be more than that much traffic. Can't be an emergency vehicle route. There's a ton of stuff involved. This way, then you got to get 10 of your residents to sign on to it. All right, that only institutes the beginning. Then, when it finally comes to fruition, if it does, the step before fruition would be 70% of people in the neighborhood have to agree to it, period. Because you can't have the tail wagging the dog. That doesn't work. So
Okay,
that
that's
that being said, that's what we're working on now.
Dave, just since you opened Pandora's box, the grade on Quinlan and London, going down and coming up. What are the plans to make sure that's like super maintained? Because in the winter, I could see that being a problem.
Well, because of the proposed stop signs, which
Yeah.
are going to come to pass.
Yeah.
It is considered one of our main roads, so it is well maintained. You know, I think the key there is going to be like what we had on Strawberry Road when we added in those 2 stop signs and created a 3-way stop with Foothill. I think the key is going to be, you know, people becoming acclimated to it. You know, we have done research. The majority of accidents that have occurred at that intersection have been people coming out towards Quinlan from London. Okay, and when you're coming down Quinlan, and there's quite a sight line from the top of the hill, I think what happens is people don't realize how quickly those cars are moving. So they look to the left, they see a car at the top of the hill. They look to the right, okay, they look at their phone, and next thing you know, they pull out, okay, and boom, they get hit. So, you know, I think the key will be adding in those stop signs and making people in far enough in advance aware of the fact that they're there.
Right,
You
but
know,
I'm
it
worried
might be
about-
with some road striping as well.
I'm sort of worried about this. I'm coming down Quinlan. I hit my brakes. I'm an inexperienced driver. I slam on it instead of pumping. I hit some slick road.
But bear in mind, you still have a 4-way stop. So you still have the hope that the people on
Everyone else
London,
is stopping.
right? If you don't have the
Okay.
4-way stop, you got no hope.
Okay, fair
You
enough.
know, and honestly, Ed, that was the genesis of the fact that we have not addressed that. That was the major concern we had with respect to that. Was exactly what you said, you know. So
They might not necessarily be speeding, Dan.
and
You could-
actually,
you could be going 30 miles an hour in a snowstorm, hit an icy patch, and Mark actually agrees with me for once. So
well, Rob Rohr did a traffic study out there already because this has been on the agenda for 100 years,
Yep.
and determined that there wasn't
okay,
a
good.
substantial speeding issue.
All right.
Well, let me just add, since I use that street all the time because I live in Jefferson Village, and I'm always going down there. When you're coming down, let's say where I'm coming from town and going home to Jefferson Village, as I'm coming down before I hit London Road, even though I'm very conscious
You're
of my
slowing
speed,
down.
I have to even hit the brakes to slow my speed down because you have a natural increase in speed because you're going downhill, which would be exacerbated, yes, but it's still, even if you're not speeding, you speed if you're not on the brakes because of the incline. And I cautiously go to London and purposely look just to make sure nobody else is coming because I don't know. But
the experience of age, Susan. I have that too.
it's just an issue even for non-speeders. It's a concern, and it's just
That's the grade.
it's the grade, and it's safe driving, and it's just being a cautious driver is all it is.
And I agree with you on that. So let me ask you a question. Do we have a problem passing a resolution that Diana could submit the law out for referral as soon as received by the town attorney?
Yes, I make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What did you say?
That you can
It's gotta be
refer,
received by the town clerk, not the
okay,
town
That's what he said.
that you could refer it out as soon as received from the town attorney.
Thank you.
I know that we don't want to have Adam receive his own laws. That would be trouble.
I'd like to see the law before we forward it to
It'll be
the-
referred out to all of us at the same time.
All right.
We can
all
refer
right.
it to the town board before we refer it out officially.
I would appreciate that.
You're gonna have it
Want
in
to take a
5
vote
minutes.
on that?
All right, well, if we have it in 5 minutes, that's fantastic. Let's do it.
Can I have, you want for referring it to town boards?
Yeah,
I did. We did
just
that.
voted
already.
on it.
We had
Susan
a
sec-
first, we
Susan
had a
motioned.
second by Patrick, and an all in favor, aye.
Yeah.
5-0. Okay,
Thank you.
Solar.
thank you, Dave. I think you need to stay for the last thing today too, Dave. All right. Solar law. Let's have a little bit of discussion. Adam, please take out your notebook or notepad on your computer.
Solar or battery?
So
First is solar.
Okay.
Battery, I don't, the discussion is really
Okay.
on
Go ahead.
putting it out. So, we've had a lot of influx coming in. Today I want to get everyone's opinion on changes, get it into a proposed law, so we can either, we can move it forward and either vote it up or vote it down.
Yeah, there are a few things we've changed, right? The draft, the most recent red line changes the minimum lot size for large scale from 5 to 10 acres. There's also some changes to screen requirements, and there was a change from a 100-foot to a 200-foot setback. Those are the big changes.
When
really.
was this proposed?
Sorry?
I didn't see any red line on this.
It's on the website, I believe.
Yeah, that was the first,
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed it many times.
that was the last.
That's an understatement, but yes, we've discussed those changes repeatedly and ad nauseum, and I
thought
want to
that's
get,
where you
I
got-
want to get a law in together and get it out there and figure out where we're going.
Because I thought you were looking for the 20-acre increase on your
Yeah,
notes.
I don't think, to my recollection, we had discussions, but we never agreed on what Adam was putting into a
That's
proposed
why I
law.
want to do it today, because I said, take the notes, this is what people are saying,
Yeah.
let's put it together, but now,
That's what
even
more
though we
spoken.
did that, there's still now more like, well, I want to change it, I've heard 15, I've heard 20, and I want to get this settled right here, right now, and I want to move this forward, because we've been dilly-dallying with this for way too long.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I agree. We
So-
have to move forward.
So, the
I-
10 acres, how are we on that?
No, I would go larger. I would go 2025.
You would go 2025?
Yeah.
I
But
think,
actually, what I would prefer to do instead of tweaking the existing law, my preference is to go to a floating zone.
right, which I think is just an opening for Article 78, because you come in with something, Patrick comes in with something. I like your plan, I don't like Patrick's, but it's arbitrary now, and well, we're going ahead with yours, even though they're very similar. I'm not going with Patrick's. I just opened up the town to a lawsuit.
Even though you have strict criteria, and it's just like the overlay law where you have criteria and somebody meets if you have an overlay zone and it encompasses 20 different properties within the overlay zone, and somebody comes in and says, please give me overlay status because I meet your 8 criteria or 7 out of your 8 criteria. The same thing would apply to a floating zone where you have criteria. The applicant comes in and says, I meet your criteria, now rezone me. It's the same very same concept that you're using. Whether it's successful or not, that's debatable. But that's what you're using, and that's what this board has accepted, and that's the way you're evaluating. You evaluated Underhill Farm, and you're possibly going to
But in all
evaluate
this-
Navajo
In
for
all
it.
this conversation, we haven't had any conversation about criteria. So other than the stuff that we want to put in the law, such as the screenage, the size of the lot. So we could put the criteria right into the law, leave them open for, Sergio has a point where he's like, you know what? I would rather, if they want a variance, they go through zoning, not through the planning board.
That's where it belongs.
To keep them on theirs, and you know what? I'm not truly in favor of it, but I think it's a good compromise. I think that our planning board could get that job done. But then again, if it goes to zoning, they might be relying on planning board memos, so they'll be able to.
I'm not sure where you're
When
talking
you
about
guys,
planning board zoning.
I'll give you my criteria. I was waiting for. I don't want to interrupt
Go ahead.
anybody. You
No,
guys,
go
I'll
ahead.
wait and then
No,
I'll
go
speak
on.
The
to
same
you.
criteria that you could
I'll
talk
tell you-
about
I'll tell
lot
you-
size coverage could go into the criteria for the floating
My-
zone, but you look at it very
I'd re-
specifically. on the
Can I
site.
just mention that the idea is just to agree on a law to get referred out and a public hearing scheduled. These issues can be discussed during the public hearing.
Thank you,
Something to bear in
Adam.
mind. You
Yep.
don't have to necessarily agree on anything right now.
I'd like to hear your criteria, Sergio.
So, my version of the law would be multifaceted, and I think we had a conversation earlier today where if somebody is in a certain zone and they go into and they get a variance to go into a different zone, they'll have to abide by that other zone's criteria. So, the way I would look at the law is I would have, first of all, an all-out ban on large scale ground mount solar. That's what we're talking about. Nobody's mentioned that, and I'm sure people out there are confused. They don't know what we're talking about. They think solar. All solar. What kind of solar? It would be tier 2, large scale, ground mount solar. The first part of my law, the way I would look at it, the way I would like it constructed, is that there'd be an all-out ban.
Residential and commercial.
Residential and commercial. The second part of my criteria, the second part of my law would be a set of criteria if somebody would have got past the ban, either through a lawsuit or however, then there would be a set of criteria that you would have to abide by, and that would be very strict for me. I would go with a 15 acre lot size. I would go with the screening. I like the way the screening is described, because I really don't think fully screened is something attainable. But I just don't think that language works. So whatever the language is with the screening, I'm pretty content with that. I would go with the 50% lot coverage. And again, this is criteria that's post the ban, right? First it's a ban, and if you get past the ban, then you have to go with these stringent criteria. I would go with the lot coverage at around 50%. I would go with the zoning is where you would go for variance, and I would go with the existing projects. This law would be retroactive to those existing projects, and so that means that those projects, they would be banned. If they decide to sue the town and whatever, or do whatever they got to do, and they hypothetically win the lawsuit, then they would have to, then that other set of criteria that I just mentioned would come into place. But for me, large scale, ground mount solar does not belong in our residential neighborhoods. I'm sorry, I just disagree with it. I don't like the way they look. I go across New York State and I see these things and they just look abandoned. It looks like an abandoned piece of property. And I just don't think that that's what we need in Yorktown. And I fully understand that there's a crisis, with electricity, and everybody has to do their part. Many towns around us have banned it. Many towns around us have larger restrictions on their lot size. Honestly, I think this is a mess that the state created. Why we have power shortages, because they decided that they wanted to act politically and ban nuclear plants. And it's also something that the government created, this crisis, because they pushed to have all electric too quickly. And we just can't generate the power. And I really don't think a couple of solar farms around here, it's going to contribute peanuts to the grid. I don't like them. I don't want them. I don't think they belong in our residential neighborhoods. And if somebody makes the argument, then these empty lots will be houses. Great. We'll be contributing in a positive way to the housing crisis that we have. Now, whether it's affordable or not, that's a whole other discussion. So I don't want to get off on a tangent with that. And that's where I am. And that's why I'm all for the ADUs, right? I'm consistent in where, I'm sorry?
It will be, if the history.
No, we
sorry,
can't.
No
We
comment.
can't.
No
We
comments.
should-
No comments.
Sorry.
No, I heard you make a comment which, really wasn't appropriate. I don't know what you said, but, so anyway, but you interrupted me while I was speaking, and I didn't know what was going on.
All right,
Okay.
all right, please.
So
please.
anyway, so that's where I am with that, and
Can you explain?
That's what I want. That's it. And if I don't get it, it's okay. But I'm advocating for the people of Yorktown and our residential neighborhoods. I'm all for development in our commercial areas. But our neighborhoods, they need to be protected from this thing. I'd rather see a nice development with kids riding bicycles than some abandoned-looking piece of property, which is what
Sergio,
it looks like.
I agree with you totally about the problem in residential neighborhoods. Could you explain to me why you would have, in a sense, a two-part law? You would ban it, but you would also have criteria if they were allowed. I don't understand.
No, he wants to make sure that there's a system set up. If there's an Article 78 and for some reason New York State, the courts say, no, solar is allowable, he wants to make sure it's there. But we don't need to do it in the law. It could be set through the criteria of the planning department. But he wants to make sure that if there's a way for them to get in, that there are strict regulations that they would need to follow. Hopefully, we write a strong enough law, though, that we don't have to worry about that.
Well, in a way, this is a very similar discussion that I asked for legal advice in our executive session. You know how I'm kind of fixated on...
Susan, you can't talk about executive session.
No, but the issue came up in executive session because it will come up with the battery storage law, because it's the same concept. The issue of, if you ban it, okay, then in the same law, can you have criteria? Or what happens if you don't have criteria, and then you get sued, and the court says you have to allow this, and then what do we do if we don't have criteria? So while banning isn't my first choice is looking at it on a case-by-case basis, which is why I like the floating zone with strict criteria, where you put in all this criteria, your lot size, your coverage, your screening, and all of that. So you say, yes, it's appropriate on this parcel, it's absolutely not appropriate on that parcel, and we have full authority to say no. So, but if you're going to ban it, then we ban it and we don't have criteria, because you can't do both in the same law.
I think you can. I think you're writing a multifaceted law,
Adam?
and a floating zone makes it possible. Whereas
Can I get a
I
legal?
just don't want it. Yeah, sure.
What's your legal representation on that?
I'm not really sure where to begin. There's a lot that's going on. I mean, at the end of the day, if the board wants to, well, first of all, if we're talking now about completely banning them,
Yeah.
that's a different thing, right? A different
But
law.
let's just answer that one thing. If we ban them completely, do we still need criteria
Can
in the
we
event that we're
do
forced?
criteria? Do we?
I've
need-
never seen that. It doesn't make any sense to me
Okay.
to do it that way.
Okay.
All right. So
Let's take that off.
So that's it. That's a ban. The other issue which you discussed, and I think we need more discussion, is there are two proposals that have been before the planning board. And the question comes up, do we make those retroactive? One of them signed a waiver and said, I know that you're having a moratorium, and it's on my own risk that I pursue this because you may change the laws, whatever. The other application hasn't been before the planning board since 2023. All right. So whether it's still active or not, we don't know because we haven't heard from them. So I think any law that we do pass should include anybody who comes into that moratorium, which says you cannot go ahead unless you have gotten, I think it's planning board approval.
Building permit.
Or building permit, whichever. I don't remember the
Basis
exact.
approval.
And
Adam?
neither of these two have met that, and neither one has applied for a hardship waiver, which
So
is
to
another.
my point, and I simplified everything you just said,
Yeah.
are you going to make it retroactive or not? It doesn't have to be that complicated. So
Not-
one
I
of
would
the
not make it
criteria
retroactive.
would be, is it going to be retroactive or not? It's simple. We don't have to.
Okay,
drag
so
out-
I would
drag
say,
everything.
if you don't want to go with the floating zone, then I would go for the ban on the residential blank without any criteria, which, as Adam says, it doesn't work, and not make it retroactive. That would be a very simple law.
I think it's a new way to look at creating a law. Just because it hasn't been done in the past doesn't mean it can't be done now, where you have certain stringent criteria already set in place in the event that an Article 78 comes out and doesn't end up in, let's say, if we did decide to ban in our favor. That's all I'm saying. Just because it doesn't make sense because it was never done. Maybe it's a creative way to add to create a multifaceted law that if you're going to ban it, you're also going to try to guarantee that if it does come to fruition, the criteria is already set in place by law. That's all I'm saying. I think it makes perfect sense.
Then you'd have to do the same thing with the battery storage.
You don't have to do the same thing with the battery storage unless you want to do the
Well,
same
the
thing with
batter-
the
the
battery
batter-
storage. And you don't have to do the same thing with all the other laws that come into that move forward unless you want to do that with other laws. You don't have to do anything just because you do it once.
What is
If the battery storage has the additional kicker, and we can postpone that to the discussion, which is later in the agenda on the battery storage, there's the additional kicker about the public utility aspect, the waiver of that, which makes it more likely that we could have a challenge on the public.
That's
on
only
battery
if the
storage.
law. That's only if it ends up in ORES, and the only way it can end up in ORES is if battery storage is coupled with solar on the same property. Otherwise, battery storage doesn't end up in the front in the hands of ORES, who can make it who can declare it as some kind of public utility. So if we're not combining the two, it's my understanding that the way it works, it will never get to ORES, that agency. If it doesn't get to ORES, then it can't come to fruition. So I don't know.
I would go with the ban, no criteria, and not retroactive. Very simple. Those would be my decisions. And unfortunately, it would it would preclude having any solar on an appropriate site, which is a problem, but I think the overriding concern would be not in residential, because I don't think any of these criteria, I would not allow it with any criteria.
And just to clarify and just to qualify what I'm saying, is I'm not against solar, but I just don't think it belongs in residential neighborhoods
agree.
this large scale. Now, do I mean, just to be clear to everybody out there, am I talking about, you know, a house that wants to put solar panels on their roof and have that, the tier one battery? No, it's got nothing to do with it. And, you know, there are other responsible ways that we could promote solar without, you know, what I think is a blight, what would amount to a blight. That's it. And so
I'd like to
that's
hear
how I feel
from
about it.
the other boards. I think Sergio and I are somewhat on the same, almost on the same path. We're like 95% on the same path.
I'm on the record multiple times, and I'll just go saying that, unfortunately, we have to think about our future of our town, that there are going to be power struggles with all of the move towards battery-operated everything, with electric-powered everything. You have your electric cars. I understand, and you know, I still need to do more of the research, but I was talking to someone from Con Edison who said that a 4-port car charger uses the approximate energy of a 4-story building to charge cars. We look at the fact that New York was trying to ban gas stoves and go to electric stoves, trying to ban gas water heaters and go to electric water heaters, ban gas heat and go to electric heat. We can, first off, we can't afford it as residents and citizens, but we are going to turn into California with rolling blackouts during the summer because we're not going to have enough energy. And we need to do whatever we can to strengthen the resiliency of our grid because we're going to have a ton of issues. Now, solar does not give us the safety issues that large-scale battery storage does. So it's a lesser of two evils. And if I need to look at something, I personally think we need to look at that solar, and we need to be able to say, what can we do for resiliency? And also, in a sense, by taking that property for the 20-25-year life of those solar panels and giving our illustrious government an opportunity to catch up in how we produce energy, how we push towards getting cleaner, and then maybe have something that's actually functional. We need to look at it now. Solar panels are a 20-25-year hit. Then those are usually decommissioned. And I like the something Patrick had brought up about making sure that bond covers the cost of that in case they walk away. Make it a strong enough bond that they have to either take care of it or we will have more than enough to take care of it at that decommissioning time.
Ed, I agree with you that we should be doing more and we need to promote solar, which is why I see the floating zone as a compromise. It's a compromise between your views and Sergio's views. It's in between. It says, yes, we allow some solar, but only where it's appropriate and it meets certain criteria. So we incorporate pieces of your concern, pieces of Sergio's concern. That's why I think it's a compromise. No law is going to be perfect. Okay, Sergio's isn't perfect. The ban isn't perfect because it doesn't meet your needs. Your goals aren't perfect because they don't meet some of Sergio's concerns. So
I don't think there's anything that
no law is going to be perfect.
There's nothing that exists that's perfect, right?
But I think the floating zone, which sets criteria,
I think you set
which
the
allows
criteria in your law.
in the law, you set criteria, whether it's the acreage size, it's the coverage, it's the setback, it's the buffering, it's the concern, which unfortunately nobody has mentioned here. But it's covered to somewhat in the percentage coverage is we're not clear cutting hundreds of trees.
It was mentioned here.
All right. So that is a concern. So all of that is in your strict criteria. So if it's appropriate on some parcel, you say yes. And if it's not appropriate, you absolutely can say no because, yes, they're ugly. And most of the places, they might not belong. But we leave the door open for something where it may be appropriate.
But the supervisor brought up the possibility of a lawsuit when you allow one person and one project and not another, and that's a legitimate
No,
concern.
If anything is subjective, any part of it, like you're saying the appropriateness from the neighborhood. What makes it appropriate at Dell Farm versus or Dell Hill versus Jacob?
Well, some
Well,
lands.
if you say you want a 50% coverage, if you want a certain size setback, if you want your buffering requirements, all of those things, we're dealing now with, I don't mean for this to get off topic, but we are dealing with a parcel that wants to go into the Osceola overlay district. And we're going to have to make a decision. Yeah, that's subjective. They're going to present their issues, and we're going to have to make it. Every decision we make, we apply certain criteria, and yes, there's subjectivity in applying criteria. But if you have criteria, and they're very clear, and this can be clear because it's numerical, it's lot size, it's coverage, it's setbacks, all of those things, okay, then we're not opening it up to a lawsuit. We have a very defensible position
So Susan,
when it comes
once
to a
again,
lawsuit.
I have two that fit every criteria except Sergio doesn't think it's appropriate, but I do.
Right.
So
And it's a board vote.
if it's in
And
the
I
law,
respect- and I respect
if it's
Ed's
in the
decision.
law, it's in the law. I don't know why we have to say it's in the law, and then we're going to add. And Adam, help me on this if you agree or disagree. I don't think it's appropriate for us to say, well, it's in the law, but we're gonna sit and be the kingmakers on this, and say yay or nay based on you have everything covered. And by
You're
the way,
absolutely right,
I absolutely don't agree with everything about the overlay district law and having that, but some of those things need to be proved out in front of the board because you talk about historical relevance, you talk about commerce. There's a lot of different criteria that are not setbacks, that are not lot coverage, that are not tree removal, and those are in. We have laws on all of that, and we need to make sure that if we strengthen this law, we strengthen it.
All right, can I
I'd
voice
say-
my opinion?
yeah.
Sure, Patrick.
All right.
Do you have one?
Well, I can't get a word in, but it's okay. So look at my opinion is I'm all for a little bit. I want to tighten up. I want to tighten up the language on it because I think we need to do our due diligence and giving back some energy at some capacity because we're just using too much energy. I would like to ban it, but for the better good of the thing, I would like to at least put it in there, but with tighter regulations on it. And some of those are 15, 20 acre minimum. I'd like to have the lot coverage about, between 40 and 60%, someplace in there. And, the screening is fine. You're never going to get zero. You'll never get it. Somehow they're going to do it. And I think expanding what we have, in the red line version to what we are now, I think technology 5 years from now, whether it's nuclear or whatever, there's going to be new forms of energy coming down, but we have to do our due diligence now. I can't say for a fact, but, that's some of this stuff. But I do think the bond, whatever the decommission rate is today, that bond should be at least 2 to 3 times what today's value is. So I don't know what that value is, but we need to do a little research on, maybe John, I don't know if you have any experience on decommissioning solars, but whatever, if it's 100,000, then we need to tie up $250,000.
We did that on a couple of them. We asked them to look out the future.
Yeah.
What the cost escalation would be.
Yeah. So
John, you need to step up. So
I just my biggest thing is that the decommission, because I know how these things go. They put them in, they're good citizens for 2 or 3 years, and then they're down in Florida collecting their money, and now it becomes our problem.
Yeah, we have asked for the applicant to estimate with cost escalation out 25 years to establish the amount of the bond. If you want to put in there that you have to revisit and recalculate every 5 years, you can do that.
Yeah.
I just got a couple more points.
And look at Susan. I'm against the floating zone. I think we could tighten up the language in the law. And it takes the ambiguity, ambiguity, you know what I'm talking about. It takes it out of the equation. That's, that's my 2 cents. And, and I think all of us are for solar on commercial rooftops and, where we can put it, so,
Not an issue, yeah.
so that's just my opinion on this, so.
Well, before you go on to your other points, see if Luciana has anything to add. And if she does, you might want to ask a question on that, so you can do a total follow-up.
I do. If he wants to, does he want to say?
No, you go first.
I can wait.
Okay, so just to be clear, lot sizes, I'm okay with going it up, keeping the 10 and then up. I wouldn't go above the 20, but I'm okay with that. Something I would like to discuss is that putting on these large solar farms, even though they are to support the grid in the future, they will displace our ecosystem and the wildlife. And just today I saw a post that there was a beautiful male coyote hanging out in Traboke in someone's backyard because it's mating season. So what happens when we do step into untouched land and we disrupt that kind of wildlife that might be hanging out? Just saying, that's something that's there.
We raised the fence skirt so they can get through.
I guess. But then they come and hang out in my backyard,
We
but
pick
that's
up-
okay.
Pick up the knickers.
Also, speaking about coming and hanging out at your backyard, a lot of these large solar installations, they require an amount of land, but they also require depth, like when they're installed, and they could create some levels of erosion and whatnot. So when we're doing the screening, I think we also need to make sure that we're paying attention to where the water is going to go for land erosion and whatnot. As far as screening goes, I know I can't screen everything, but maybe their adjacent neighbors, even though their neighbors are in that 200 to 300 setback, they're still their neighbors, having courtesy and having plantings not only supported by the native plants of Yorktown or the region, but also plants that have full coverage throughout the year, kind of like an arborvitae or something. That was in the visual part. As far as resources and manufacturing, I think that the extraction of the materials, like anything, like any type of metal, it could create pollution. I'm wondering, these solar panels are made, there was a study put in that they use and require this raw material, and there are studies that show that there could be environmental implications. I'm not sure how we allow a grand scale of solar and know what their solar panels, what that company's solar panels are made of, and would that contaminate? We have a lot of watersheds and whatnot. I feel like we go from rock to water in this town a lot. As far as reliability, I think that we need to make sure that even though we have the zoning rights and the lot sizes and the coverage and the water, storm waters and whatnot, that they're in areas that get a lot of sun. Like, there's just no point in putting them in places that they're not going to be.
And they won't, because
And-
it's a waste of money.
Right. Well, I like to believe that, but I also think that when you start doing your testing and people start to clear without the permits, we could have some disruption. As much as we want to think everybody follows the rules,
We don't allow the
some
clearing
people
without the
prefer
permit.
to pay a fee instead. I guess I understand the heavy. I'm fine also with rooftops. I'm fine also with, going into going into hybrids of whether it's your heating, whether you could use your water for your heat and whatnot. I am curious about, God bless you, the community's work. There is a bit of, I'm seeing a lot of people either say, yeah, we're all for solar or we're not for solar. And I'm curious how educated the community is to what these large scales are. And I know that's not a criteria for the law, but maybe within the law, we should be able to at least put sort of what the incentives are and how much power is going to be directed to the grid that eventually, hopefully, will get trickled down to our residents before we make promises that that's what it's going to save us in the time of blackouts, because it's not. And the truth is, I have family that works for NYSEG and Con Ed, and when there is a blackout, even though they're on the tree or they're doing something, there's always someone complaining, like, why is my house still out, and when is this going to get back? So as much as I want to say that I agree with you that we need to get ahead of the curve, I also want to say that it's not solely this. I think that if the solar panel for me was half fossil fuel and half solar energy, I might be a little bit more of a win. But right now it's solar strictly on the electric and the grid. And then the other thing that I think we've had discussions about that I just want to name, any projects that are before us that have done their work, I don't want them to be held hostage to the new law. And I don't know how much say I have on that as one vote, but I do want to name that anyone who's put it forth, they've worked in good faith based on the existing law, and they have allotted spaces and they've done the work already. If they're at a certain level in the criteria, which you would know as part of the planning and the zoning would know, then I think there is some grace there. I think I'm a big believer that things should be grandfathered in if someone put their dollars, their family money into it. Not everything comes from an IPO. Some things come from like hard-earned money, and this is a vision to create sustainability and to think that because now we've decided to jump on the solar wagon that somebody would lose this kind of money. Does that sit well with me? I don't know, Adam, where that is. I guess that's just my moral compass, and I just wanted to name it. That's the pieces I have.
Right. So first of all, I want to just qualify what I said about what these things look like. It's nothing against the solar companies. I think they do a great job. I think their intentions are well intended, but it's not something that's built where you're going to be mowing the grass on a daily basis and manicuring the property. It's just that's what I'm talking about. It's just you don't do that with these things, right? And it's not like that the company's coming in and they're robber barons and they're going to steal money. That is not the truth. The companies that we've been dealing with, the people I've been speaking with, are very reputable people, and I just want to get that out there. Well, you put one of these things in your residential neighborhood, they're going to be there for 30 years. Okay, I think that's what the life is: 20 to 30 years. 20 to 30 years, you're going to have this property with these things on it. That's a long, long time. Luciana brought up a very good point. There's environmental issues. Currently, there's no way to get really rid of the solar panels. It's kind of like electric cars. You get electric cars, but you can't get rid of there's really no real way to get rid of the batteries yet. We don't know. We haven't figured that part out. But we're pushing these electric cars. I have a hybrid myself that I did. And electric, initially, when we all were like, yeah, electric is great, it was affordable. Electric is just not affordable anymore. And I feel duped. I feel duped by the government. I feel duped by the state. They're like, yeah, you got to buy this. You got to buy this. Let me get you this incentive to buy this electric car. And now Con Ed, after raising their rates 20% over the last 3 years, they're proposing to go up another 40, 30, 40%. I don't know the real number. Don't quote me on it. But it's damn close to that.
18.
It's 18? 18, that's another 18%?
Another 18.
All right, so I amend my statement. It's another 18%. My bills are through the roof, my electric bills. Forget it. So, I mean, I don't really think that the responsibility that the state and the federal government created this mess, okay, by unrealistic goals. I'm not saying we shouldn't go electric. I'm not saying we should, we don't eventually have to dwindle down on our fossil fuels. But it's not the right time now, and I don't think it's the town of Yorktown's responsibility to solve a state and federal level problem. What are we going to solve next? Roe v. Wade? I mean, come on. I mean, where are we with this? This is not our responsibility to solve and come up with these solutions while we mess up our neighborhoods. Did you know? Did you know that? Hold on. That anybody here with Fort Drum? Well, the state has a proposal out there to build a nuclear plant in Fort Drum. Did anybody know that? You know why? Because maybe they've seen the errors of their ways, and maybe the issue needs to be solved at the state level for New York. Lastly, if we're going to do a criteria, I want to just talk real quick about lot size calculation, because we play games with lot size calculation, right? So now, if we say there's a minimum lot size coverage, is 50%. That doesn't mean an 8-foot panel, then there's a 2-foot space, I'm making numbers up, and then there's another 8-foot panel, that we only count that as 16 feet, because the 2 feet in the middle doesn't really count because it's not covered, right? Because that's just a way to get around the numbers and play and manipulate them. If you're going to do a lot size calculation about lot size coverage, it has to be the entire perimeter area and whatever's in the middle, whether 2 feet or 3 feet or 1 foot is between the panels and stuff like that. So that's just another thing that I think should be something that you would consider when you're figuring out lot size. It's easy to say it's 50%, but 50% could easily become like a realistic 70% or 30% when you're not calculating the in-between spaces, or you're walking between the panels. That space doesn't count. So that's another consideration that I would put before you.
Sergio, I think you and I are in the minority on this. There are at least 3 votes to just go to to tweak the criteria. So why don't we, if we reluctantly accept that, then we start going through all the criteria and we start picking out our numbers. Because I don't think there's a support for the ban. There's not support for your ban. There's not support for my floating zone. So I think let's be realistic and let's look for the strictest possible criteria that we can have.
So where we
I
were,
think on
where
your-
we were 40 minutes ago.
Thank you, Ed, by the way.
Let's.
No, because
no,
we've
so I know, I
eliminated
understand,
two
but
options.
but we're talking about stuff that's part of the public hearing versus and stuff for the public versus this. What's the lot size we want to look at?
I go for 20.
I'm good at 15.
I'll take
myself.
15.
15 is fine with me.
All right, so we'll look at a 15, and once again, this is going to go for public hearing, so they could
we have to put this in
talk
all-
about that. We have the 200-foot setback.
I would say 200, and the town and the planning board can increase it based on topography, because as we have learned with Jacob Road,
Sounds good.
topography is
I
an
don't
issue.
think Sergio will have a problem with increasing it. But there is the opportunity to go to zoning for a variance, so.
No,
There's
yeah,
always
right.
this is a
I
planning board
understand.
issue. It's not a zoning board issue, and I would say that leave it up to the planning board. That 200 is the minimum, but they can increase it based
No,
on site conditions.
that's fine. What are we talking lot coverage?
I would go 50%, and they subtract out wetlands and slopes in excess of 15%, and it's the total coverage. So
Why
to
wouldn't I
your
let them
point-
do that work?
Well,
The-
yeah,
the
John.
other departments do that.
Well, I want to ask John a question on that. Isn't it more appropriate to put something on a slope that may
Yeah.
not be visible?
Correct.
And would actually probably cause us to need to cut down less trees?
Possibly.
Yeah.
A slope,
so-
if you're working on slopes and greater than 15%, you're also increasing the chance of erosion.
Well, I assume we look at erosion control, correct?
That's what I said.
Well, you can build on anything with erosion control.
Indeed, we do.
All right, so I don't agree with the slopes. I
What
think
about
they go-
wetlands?
Well, they could go for a wetlands permit on that. That's our law. They can apply for that. So I don't think we ban it outright because there's a law,
there.
policy, procedure already set up for that existing.
Then would you go, then I'd go down to 40%. I'd go down to 40% coverage. I want to make it as difficult as possible.
Of course you do, but you know what? Announcing that to everyone is not really probably the smartest idea.
I want to preserve the residential character of our neighborhoods, which is my concern, Sergio's
I
concern.
understand that, and I don't know if 50% coverage and it's surrounded by trees really will affect that. You're talking. You want slopes. You want it to be where it's probably the least buildable property, and you want to keep. I think you want to move forward on that. So
I want to also decrease the chances of clear cutting a woodland and losing the valuable functions of woodlands, which we haven't been talking about at all, which is another criteria that I want
well,
to.
actually, we have had that
You won't.
discussion.
You won't.
You'll actually gain.
The properties will be developed, and they will be developed
house,
more
if you're building
permanently,
a
Good.
as I've said before.
If you're building a house, the zoning.
So you're not
code-
saving the forest.
A zoning code
I don't have a
says-
problem with the development because we'd be contributing to a positive impact on housing.
Not talking about that. I'm talking about you're not saving the forest.
And if you're building a house, the lot coverage on a single-family house ranges from, I think it's like 25% to 30% total coverage for all the buildings. So in any lot, you're leaving a large part vacant. Yes, you have to have a road to go in. So I would go for, I'll go for 40% coverage.
I'm fine with 50, Ed.
As I'm fine
And
with
200,
50.
and 200 foot set screening.
Luke?
Same.
Okay.
I would like stronger words on screening, that the screening, the visibility has to be from the property line and not as was proposed in an amendment in 2024 to a structure on the abutting
I
property.
thought it looked at both of them.
It does.
John?
I thought it looked
The
at
screening,
structure
there's
and
new language on the screening in there. It's been in there since we first
Yeah, it's
let the law
no
out.
change to the current, which is the property line.
No, I'm not sure what you're asking.
that the buffering, the screening, the visibility issue
Yeah.
has to be from the property line of an adjacent property. There was one version that I think was in a 2024 amendment that was never, the town board never adopted, that changed that to the visibility had to be from a structure on the house. So if this is my property from here to here, the house could have been from here. So there's a big difference. Is the visibility from the house or is the visibility from the property line? So it makes a significant difference.
I don't
Yeah,
understand.
it raises the bar.
I want it from the property line.
That lowers the bar.
Because from the structure, it's
But it also prevents, if I have a large parcel and then I want to subdivide it, okay, then I'm going to have problems if I want to subdivide this half of my property, but it's not going to be practical because it's going to back up to it. It's going to be close by to
For the neighboring property owner?
it's going to be close to
If
to
the
the
neighbor,
solar farm.
if you're saying that the neighboring property owner will have trouble subdividing the property, they're not subject to the solar law or the screening requirement.
No,
It's
but
not retroactive.
It's the future. It's the future use of the property.
Okay.
That was one of my issues. And then I want more controls, and I want more examination of the loss of the function when you're cutting down a large number of trees. That the function of the lost functions of the trees have to be analyzed, not just comparing the carbon sequestration number, which is just that's an I think it's an EPA regulation. It's a very generic.
Not a regulation, it's a
It's
calculation.
It's a very generic
it's a
calculation, which doesn't. The
It's not
species of
generic,
trees,
it's a
the-
calculation.
Calculation.
Susan,
I want a calculation of the lost functions.
If I am provided with the method to do that, then okay, but it hasn't come forth yet. I don't know where it is.
I think there are some methods.
I mean,
I think
I
we
haven't
have
seen
to look-
anything.
We have to look at that. I think there are some methods.
we
It's
we
an
should not.
emerging field.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. We should not be looking personally to say how can we regulate the hell out of everything so it's not possible. You know what? There's accepted formulas that are governmental, EPA. Why would we say, well, you know what, we're glad the EPA is on this, but we should add 6 different layers that you now have to go through? I'm sorry, you know, this is reinventing the wheel for what? To make everything untouchable? I don't understand the
And
thing.
take out the carbon sequestration number, which is in the law, which you'll always show that the carbon sequestration is better if you do solar than if you do trees. But you're not talking about the potential cost because the woodland has a very significant role in controlling stormwater. And when we cut down the trees, we're going to have more of a runoff, no matter what the engineers say when they're going to design all
Okay,
of their
but by
engineering.
having only 50% lot coverage, that you still have half of that habitat, half of those trees, half of that
Well, it's
protection,
better.
and then you mitigate for the rest of it. It's you know.
And I'm all for keeping the hands of the planning department. You guys do a good job. You know what I mean? So, I'm in.
Well, and I'm more than happy to say EPA regulations, DEC gets involved, or DEP. You know what? These people overregulate to the 9th degree, and it's one of the complaints I hear all the time from homeowners who want to do something on their own property. If they're in the watershed, you got to wait a year for DEC approval, and you know what? It's not appropriate.
Talking about that.
Well, no, well, yeah, we are, because we're talking
so
about
we're talking about very
over-regulating on the things that are already regulated.
We're talking about cutting down 500, 600 trees. All right.
And gaining a lot more.
I won't belabor the point. The next point is the retroactive, and I strongly feel that this law, all these new criteria, the 2 that are pending should not be grandfathered in. They pursued, Jacob Road pursued its review, knowing that the rules could change. They signed a document saying, we know the laws can be changed. They were aware of that. There's no reason why they have to be grandfathered into the old rules. And the Dell has not been pursuing its application for close to 2 years. So I don't think we owe them anything.
Well,
And the last public hearing was adjourned because there was more information. They never even came back to supply the information that the planning board
well, maybe they go away and that's one we don't have to worry about. I
We
think
don't make
that,
them retroactive.
I think that even if we don't make them retroactive, they have the opportunity to apply for a hardship. And that's, I believe, stays in planning
What's that?
if they apply for a hardship.
No, that's
on
in
it.
the
What
moratorium.
kind of
We haven't
hardship?
applied.
A hardship from what?
You know, from the new regulations, so almost like going for a zoning variance.
Well,
Neither
if
them have applied.
if it's pursuant to some of the regulations, then it would be a zoning variance.
Yeah.
If it's
okay.
from the law itself, then that would be the courts.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if it's not if we don't grandfather them in, and they're going to be, these two will be subject to the new law, if they don't like the new law, then they go for a variance.
Well, I already know that Luciana feels they should be grandfathered.
Well, my
You
feeling
don't.
is they shouldn't be.
Patrick?
Oh, I think, I
They
don't know exactly where they lie with planning and, you know, does anybody have a building permit?
No.
Okay. So,
Both are well,
talk to John?
yeah.
Thank you.
both are well along in the process and have done quite a bit of work. Dell Avenue is, there's not much left for them to produce in terms of data and plans and so forth. I would say the same with Jacob Road. Jacob Road is working through still some of the visual aspects of it and a few other things, but they've produced a lot of work as well too. So they're both well down the road. And by the way, I think the Dell Avenue representatives were here at one of your meetings when you were discussing this and did
They
speak
were.
to it, so.
So if we grandfather them in, they adhere to our criteria?
Yeah, which doesn't mean they
No.
go forward or not, but it
Susan.
means that
Can I talk to John?
Yeah, if
Thank
you,
you.
The old one.
Thank you.
if I understand what you mean, if you grandfathered them in, they would be able to continue on under
The old,
what's
criteria.
existing now,
okay.
which both of them will meet your
lot.
lot size. They're not, I'm not sure about the lot coverage. It'll be close and, or it won't work. I think the 200-foot setback will affect both of them in certain areas. So those are the things that are there.
Thanks, John.
John, could you do something for us? Is just put together a quick memo on how much they would affect on the coverage and the
On those
setback?
two?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So that'll give us the opportunity to really figure out if it's a grandfather issue or not.
I think one of the issues we haven't talked about, but there's been no dispute in this board. I think the current law, correct me if I'm wrong, allows a battery storage as a component to a ground-mounted solar farm, and that we didn't want that.
Well, if you're going to take out the ability to do batteries, then it will not
Then
be,
we won't need that,
it won't
okay.
be allowed with or without a solar
Because
farm.
that's a hard no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Adam, do you have enough to give me a new red line law?
I don't know what you guys want to do. I mean, it's not clear to me.
Well, you heard
Right.
15 acre lot
I heard the
coverage.
15,
Two-
grandfathering, what do
Well,
we,
the grandfather, I want a little more information.
so then I can't.
Well, everything but. Let's put the coverage at 50, the setback at 200, and the 15 acre lot coverage 50%.
Well, what more
Yeah,
information
but
do we
the
need
law,
about the grandfather?
the law, we have a provision in the law that has this provision. If there's a provision in the law that deals with this grandfathering aspect.
Oh,
So if I'm gonna
From the last
draft,
time.
So
yeah,
what,
if I'm
what
gonna
is,
draft the law,
what is the provision?
it's complicated, but basically it provides that the Dell Avenue project was grandfathered into limits that existed before the law that's on the books. That part of the law does not apply to the
Jacob
other project, Jacob Road. So, you know, the issue though is what do you want to do on that point, right? If you want to grandfather them both in, I can do that. If you want to keep the status quo for the two of them,
Timing.
status quo for the two of them, that's fine. I can do that. I need that guidance though. Otherwise,
I'd
the
like
local
status
law
quo
is
for
going to be
the two of
incomplete.
them, because they're meeting most of the new criterias.
No, we don't know that.
We do know that their lot sizes are, and that their setbacks are.
The coverage.
Well, no,
the
setbacks.
coverage and the
Coverage,
setbacks.
okay.
Coverage is close and
John's gonna give us a
setback right now.
memo.
John's gonna give
Right,
us a
so
memo
as soon
on
as
that.
we get that, just put the other stuff in place, we'll get that from John, and then we could make a decision, or, you know, I could poll people by email just to what put in, because it's gonna go for public hearing anyway. And it could be, looked at and beaten 9 ways to Sunday at public hearing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Please let, poll the board.
I just
Yeah,
said that's
okay.
exactly what I
Just-
said I'm
just
gonna do.
please do that.
Exactly what I said I'm gonna do. All right, so, thank you. We can move on, hopefully.
Can I
David?
request,
No, David.
can I request if you have any questions regarding my resolutions? Because I assume the battery storage
No,
is
actually,
going to
the
be an
batter-
equally long
No.
discussion.
No.
No, that's
All right,
actually a
so,
gift.
so, battery law discussion, we've been through it. There's enough of the law in place. I think, Adam, we went over that the last time.
Yeah, you're eliminating. tier
eliminating is
two,
a use.
changing the threshold, just schedule a public hearing.
Right, so can I have a motion to, and we already referred it out.
Can I,
We have a
Motion.
comment.
did you get a memo from the planning board, I hope, on that?
I didn't see anything.
I didn't see
Okay.
anything other.
They brought up, which I think is a good point, that you will have batteries that have been installed and are operational, and they probably should benefit, and we would benefit from continued regulation on the books to continue to regulate them.
Well, we should maybe have the law saying that whatever's existing needs to be maintained.
We talked about that. We want to update the existing language.
I'm just saying
It's
that.
familiar, like the multifaceted
Yeah.
law I was proposing,
So,
huh? So we want to update the existing language. So this way, because to continue to regulate what's already
What's already-
in place,
Okay.
is what you're saying. And then if we're banning it, then do the ban.
So we're banning
But-
for future.
Two
Yeah.
things.
And I don't know whether this has to be in the law or not, but we're allowing the tier one to continue. That's what a homeowner would use.
Absolutely.
But right now, they just have to get a building permit, and the building permit application, as it is now, does not ask for any details about the batteries, about the storage facility, the types of battery, the size, the manufacturer. There's a checklist that NYSERDA suggests. I'm not saying we have to.
John's looking at that, but this is right now is on tier 2.
Yeah, we just
I'd
promised
like to-
Dave we were
So,
gonna.
but I don't know if in the law, if it doesn't have to go in the law, then we definitely have to let the building department know that it either has to modify the building permit or have a separate permit application.
Right, we'll have a
for a tier one
conversation.
They
battery
have a,
storage.
they have a separate permit application.
And I don't think that.
Well, I haven't seen it.
I don't think we have to
I
throw
haven't
an
seen it.
permit application through the law anyway. They could
Okay,
just,
I just,
put
that
it in
just,
place.
we need more information about the tier one battery storage.
Okay, but on the tier 2, so Adam, do we have maintaining for what's originally there? Or what's in place already? Because I think there are 2 in place, one at BJ's and one over by,
There's more than that.
how many are there, John?
IBM.
There's IBM,
Oh.
there's Gomer Street, there's
Gomer Court, right? You mean
Gomer Court, yes.
BJ's.
BJ's, and there is one approved on Foothill, so you have 4 at least.
Is that
There's
part
not
of the
another-
solar?
Part of the solar.
Okay. So those 4 need to be maintained as appropriate with the existing laws.
Well, the recommendation is to have something that actually continues to regulate them, yes.
Yeah.
If any of those existing battery storage facilities that we have wanted to put solar on their land coupled with the batteries, can they do it?
Well, Foothill is coupled with solar. IBM is coupled with solar. Staples is coupled with solar. The only one that's not is
Gomer
Court.
Court.
And there's no land there for ground mounted panels.
It's not,
Especially our new criteria.
not big enough
Yeah.
to get the right amount of solar to make it.
So
Worthwhile.
Staples is coupled with solar
On the roof.
on the roof.
Yep.
The solar's on the roof.
Perfect. I love it. I can't see it.
All right.
It's 100% screened.
Not if you're in a plane
Not if you're or a helicopter.
or a helicopter.
Yes.
So
Or if you're really tall.
Oh, that's not me, so I'm good.
Sergio doesn't have to worry
I
about
don't have to worry about that.
Oh, thank you for bringing up your plane issue. As one of the criteria in the solar law, when it deals with the visibility, would it be appropriate to require a balloon test?
We have done them.
I know you've done it, but it's not required. It's optional, I think. I'm just saying, would that be sufficient?
I think every one that you've done has required balloon testing.
We did Foothill, we did Hill Boulevard,
We even did the one at Grand Knolls that never happened.
we did the one on Hemlock. I don't think we did it for Kitchewan or Arcadia, nor did we do it for IBM because it didn't seem pertinent to do it at that time and where they were located.
All right,
Yeah,
so you
and
want
if
to
you
leave it
watch them, they don't
flexible
even
to the
stay in the
planning
right
board.
spot.
Okay, all right.
They're literally a balloon.
All right, Dave, good night. I'll call you if I need anything, since.
You sure?
Can we just move on?
Go.
Let's
Well,
go.
No, if you're
Patrick,
gonna zip through the resolutions, I don't
well,
mind.
Patrick left, but we probably have Adam, do you have enough of the information is my question?
For,
What we just went over for battery storage.
For
I
existing.
know we put
so
it
we're gonna
out.
change, we're gonna modify battery storage also?
Well,
That's fine.
Well, no,
can do
I don't
that.
know if we need to modify. Do we have the information about the maintenance of
To
the
some
existing?
degree, yes. There may be things that we wanna add, but there are continuing requirements for the existing tier 2 facilities.
Okay, great.
Now,
So,
but, I could talk to John and we can look at it again and we can have it next week if there's any issues and you can just refer it next week.
all right, let's do it that way then.
So just so I'm clear, the existing Tier 2 facilities that we do have, none of the existing facilities have enough space to add ground mount solar to it. Is that accurate? I mean, you
There's
got
only
Staples.
one. There's only one.
Only one that doesn't have it, and they can't.
Okay. That
So
was the question.
Staples has added to theirs.
Yeah.
They
on the
started
roof.
out and then they added. So
On the
they're
roof. I love contributing
No,
to the
No, no,
group.
they've added batteries.
batteries. You talk about batteries?
Yeah.
If they
no,
add
I'm
it to their
talking about
battery,
the solar panels. That was my question.
the
was,
only one that doesn't have
Go.
room for solar panels is Gomer Court.
and they don't have the
And
ground
The
mount
other ones already
space.
have solar.
And they don't have the ground mount space for it.
That's what I meant.
Is that accurate?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Let me
you.
get it out there.
So,
Clarity.
I would ask that you do honor Dave's request on the agenda because I will be bringing up some questions about something that comes after that, comes before that.
So, all right, thank you, Susan.
Okay, I'll take that, thank you.
Done with battery?
Next week.
I like
Not
to,
fair,
I like
Dave.
to, I like to
Can I
take the
just have
opportunity
permission for that
when I'm
so
at
she can
these
get it?
board
All right.
meetings, when
So,
I'm done,
can-
have a nice cigar and look for streetlights that are
Thank
out.
you.
So that's where I'm going.
All right, you know what, can I have a
You
motion?
just said that on air.
Can I,
Yeah, that's okay.
smoking's not illegal. His wife knows he smokes. He smells like a cigar. So, can I have a motion that when Diana gets the law, that she get, for the solar, she could refer it right out?
Motion.
Second.
But for the solar?
For the battery,
Battery,
sorry.
yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Dave, do you want me to hit your highway before you walk out the door? Sure. All right. Yeah, sure. Where is highway? It's gonna take me longer to find it.
I had the transfers for the
Number
550s, the awarding of the bid, and the new
Sarah's
employee.
pointing to number 4.
Page 4, top.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Sarah.
From the Highway Department. Award the bid for 3 Ford F-550s to Nelson Ford of Morristown, Inc. for $370,743 with where we,
Budget transfers.
yeah,
below.
where is the budget and then authorize the controller process the following budget transfer to pay for these as enumerated below. Authorize the comptroller to release the escrow deposit in the amount of $500 to Mary and Russell Secor, and this was on Illington Road for a driveway permit. Can I have a motion on those three?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Good night, David.
Good night, guys. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll pop back in. From Building Maintenance Department, award the bid for the annual maintenance and emergency on-call services for various town buildings to First Heating Solutions. And that's an annual contract of $28,500 with an hourly labor cost of $225 per hour. From the Building Department, authorize the supervisor to enter into agreement with Labella Associates to provide professional consulting services for the construction of a new education building at the T-Town project, and authorize the supervisor to enter into an agreement with Labella Associates to provide professional consulting services for the renovations of a nature center for the T-Town project. From the Engineering Department, Route 118 and Underhill Avenue intersection improvement
skip that one.
2020.
Skip that one and then go on to the
Rejecting a bid, you want to skip?
I want to discuss that. I have discussions about that.
All right.
Skip that.
Authorize controller to release the bond FSWPPP the -038-21 in the amount of $1,500 to GHP Strang LLC. Engineer said this could be released. Award the bid for a Hunter Brook CCTV inspection and authorize the controller to process the following transfers.
Just one
Oh,
correction on that, Ed.
I got it right here.
Got it, yeah, correction.
I'm sorry. Let me read it. Whereas the town advertised for bid closed-circuit television inspection of sewer lines tributary to the Peekskill Sewage Treatment Plant, and the bids are summarized as follows, and those are all the same as in the resolution. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the controller is authorized to transfer $100,000 from the Hunter Brook Sewer District Fund Balance, GD 1002, to Inflow and Infiltration Control, GD 8130.0459, and be it further resolved that the comptroller is authorized to transfer $40,000 from the Hunter Brook 202 Extension Sewer District Fund Balance, GJ 1002, to Inflow and Infiltration Control, GJ 8130.0459. Resolved that bid 24-9 for CCTV work for the Peekskill Sanitary Sewer System is awarded to Fred A. Cook Jr., Inc., the low bidder. Award the bid for ultraviolet lamp replacement disinfection system, and that one is awarded to North American UV, Inc., at a total bid price of $12,928. And be it further resolved, the bid start date is March 22nd, 2025. We did the highway already. Authorize the controller to process, no, that's there, sorry, from the legal department. Authorize the supervisor to enter into a intermunicipal agreement with the County of Westchester for access to the repository for integrated criminalistic information. That's a storage of all the records and all, and the tapes.
On the next one, with the library with the crest, it's for the installation of an electronic perimeter access control system. What is that?
That is a
Is that the
locking system, security and lock system.
Okay, I thought the Crest grant was going to go for the display, the events sign.
No, this is a different.
This is a different.
This is an older one.
This is a different
Yep,
one. Okay.
and it was for security at
Okay.
the library.
Yeah, for access control.
So authorize the controller to process the following budget transfer for the library of $72,000 to the library fund balance, from the library fund balance to the building maintenance Crest grant for installation of electronic perimeter access control system, which will be reimbursed $60,000 by a Crest grant ID 25924. And thank you to our state assemblyman and senator who have been trying to be as generous as possible to our community. From the Parks and Recreation Department, authorize the comptroller to process the following budget transfer for the Parks Department, and this is from Park Land Trust, $50,000 going to park improvements for the purchase and installation of a new playground at Blackberry Woods located on Marcy Street, Mohegan Lake. From the Office of the Personnel Manager, appoint Justin Garugna to the position of Motor Equipment Operator in the Highway Department effective April 7th, 2025. From the Police Department, authorize the Yorktown Police Department to purchase two 2025 Ford Hybrid Police Interceptor utility vehicles. Authorize the Yorktown Police Department to have RFC Emergency Lighting and Services, LLC, provide equipment and installation for those said vehicles. And from the town clerk, authorize the town clerk to advertise a bid for the rotating contactor bearing replacement. Authorize the town clerk to advertise a bid for the Lake Mohegan Biological Treatments. Ken. Authorize the town clerk to advertise for dry cleaning services for Yorktown Police Department. Can I have a motion on those?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now let's
And
go
then-
back to the one she wants.
Let's go back to the declined one or whatever. it is.
Yep.
Is this the December bid or the February bid?
What
The
page you want?
The December,
This is page 2.
the
bottom
December bid, as it says, 2024.
All right. The town got bids closed February 28th. Has the board discussed what's going to happen with those bids? You kept these open.
The board hasn't discussed yet because I am waiting for a little more information from our engineer and from the traffic consultants. And to see, we will probably have it as a agenda item because we broke it down and there's still those parts from from phase 3, and I wanted to know what that cost was. That cost overall was $175,000, which I think is ridiculous. But the one thing I sort of agree with is if we do plan on going to phase 3, the state would like us to do the proper light posts. Instead of doing the wires, they need the arms, the solid arms, so they could support the weight of the extra lane to turn for the lighting. And that actually will be a town discussion, board discussion, because if phase 3 would be all on us and the state, if possible, and possibly putting together a fund out of new projects coming in to the center of town. So that's something that we're gonna have to look at as a board before I accept any bid, and I need some information from New York State as well, so.
The reason I bring this up is because at an earlier meeting, when the board was voting to go out to bid for the second time because we had issues with the first bid, if you remember that discussion, and I re-listened to that meeting actually twice, okay, we had no knowledge, at least I had no knowledge of what was in those bid specs beforehand, all right? And some of the items that turned out to be optional issues were actually part of what the planning board approved. They were not optional, and they were not, as it was said at the February 4th meeting, that this is what the DOT needed. At that February 4th meeting, the way it was explained to me was that there was what the town, what was needed, and then what the DOT was asking us to do. Some of that ask stuff was actually what the planning board had in its approval resolution. For example, the four cross.
So let me help you,
that's
out.
what- and
I
then-
understand.
And then, wait a
Can
second,
I-
one other point I want to make. You made a point because you talked about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. That was never part of the planning board's discussion about the traffic improvements. There was never any such discussion about phasing.
So
Why
can I
did-
answer the question
Go
real
ahead.
quick? So, and Dan, where'd you go, Dan? Don't be running out the door. The information was our professionals and their professionals talking with DOT. Do you remember when that DOT meeting was, Dan? You could come up to the microphone.
Come on
So-
up, Dan.
So, the long and the short of it is there was a meeting with DOT. DOT took the plans, added stuff to them, and actually I'm still not convinced they still won't try to add stuff to them as we go along, because we've experienced that with a lot of departments. But I believe that meeting is what you drew up the bid specs on.
Right, the bid specs, well, because we needed to get a permit from DOT, you know, the four corners of what we wanted to do, you know, were established. But once we got into the nitty-gritty of permitting with DOT, other issues came up. So it became obvious once we bid it, then we knew what our budget was. So part of, what we did was to break the bid up so we can pick and choose what we may or may not want to do, which will be a whole discussion. But we also save considerably by separating the general contract from the traffic signal contract.
Right, well, I understand that, but I just wanna be sort of clear on this, because my understanding, and I was not there at every meeting, I can't see what it is, that's okay.
I can help you read it. It's the next resolution we need to split. But keep going.
All right, so my understanding was that the contractor had phase one, basically, which is apparently they're expected to add a 5% increase to the traffic on that intersection. So they were told that this, and I don't know if that was from planning originally, but this is what you have to do. If you want to go further, this would have, and I think this plan came from actually Collier's. If you want to go further and improve the intersection and really dress it up, you can do this. And then the ultimate would be to add on one extra turn lane down below and move that forward. But the second phase would open up more of the actual roadway and open up this whole bottom down here. And phase two was something that they said you probably should do, but it should not be required of the applicant.
Yeah, there was other stuff in there, like, on pedestrian crossings.
Right.
There was one that was kind of questionable. We seem to have redundant.
Right. There's a crossing in the middle, then there's another.
Right, and it adds another phase to the signal. You have to put a pedestrian post. So, so there's, it seems trivial, but it adds money.
What is it, like 45, 50 grand per crosswalk?
I forget offhand,
No,
but yeah, it was like
I have
50 to
bid specs,
75,000,
the bid
something like
prices
that.
here, but they came in. But this is a plan that the planning board approved. This is the improvement plan. This is what the planning board wanted, okay? They didn't make a distinction between phase one and phase two. The planning board, over many, many meetings, okay, looked at the applicant had different options, and they said this is the minimum, and then the planning board wanted more. They had 4 crosswalks, they had the traffic light, and they had the pedestrian controls on all of the different crossings. They also were going to upgrade the sidewalk on Underhill Avenue from Rochambeau to 118.
But I think that there's
And all of that has been either separated. They are not DOT requirements. They are the requirements that the planning board
Yes,
had
then we'll bring it
as,
with the planning board. John's here.
mitigation.
Well,
And
I
I
mean,
think
the issue really is, we could have a substantive conversation about this if I come prepared for that. Tonight, I came prepared to just reject a bid. So, I mean, I think the board is going to need to sit down. We're going to have to talk about this in detail. I didn't have the plans with me. I'm not prepared to speak to that. So, I request that we just reject the other bid and, we make this a work session item once we have all the information.
What I recall,
and
yeah,
we can
and
have
I'm sorry,
a
what I
discussion.
recall is there were always the 3 phases, and we decided to go with phase 2, and that's how we came up with the numbers and the portion that the town contribution portion, because to mitigate the problems that intersection has already. We had extensive discussions on this. I mean,
if I bring a plan, I could point out what the different
yeah, it
things
was
are.
always there were always 3 phases, but let's get back to that.
No.
Any other
Let's
questions?
get back to the agenda.
No, the issue is if you add in all of the 6 options that were in the bid specs, the ones that we didn't see, or at least I didn't see when the board discussed this, okay? And then you add in the separate traffic light issue, which the planning board wanted. This was not a DOT request. It comes out that it's going to be roughly, I think, $334,000 more than of the town share than what was in the 2004 resolution that the
So-
board
The issue,
passed.
hold on. The issue is
Issue is
the issue is
transparency.
this happens at every meeting. This is if we want to talk about this, We're talking about rejecting a bid, and we're way off the beaten path here,
All right.
and we're just extending the meeting. And then you're the first one to turn around and say, "Hey, we got to get the meetings. Don't put so much on the agenda." And yet, you know, we're here. It's like another 10 minutes.
We're talking a
about
half an hour
something.
about
I
rejecting a
want
bid.
transparency when the board, I
Susan,
don't want
that's
to,
what-
I don't
And
want
we'll
to
have
end up with
and
a
we'll have-
vote.
Why are you speaking over me? I'm not speaking over you. Why are you raising your voice? There's really no need for it. We're having a discussion, okay? The discussion right now is about rejecting a bid. That's the topic.
Okay.
You're off the beaten path
You-
on this.
you answered
and
that.
it's making it it extends the meetings, and then you complain that the meetings go too long.
I don't complain
Well,
about the meetings.
you did
No,
today.
no, I don't complain.
Okay, I'm not going to go back and forth on you because I think that's, you know, I'm just saying the thing that's on in front of us right now is rejecting the bid. It has nothing to do with all of this other stuff. It has everything to do with simply rejecting the bid. And Dan already said we could put it on as a discussion item where he would be more prepared because he would understand what we're supposed to be talking about, which is not what's going on right now.
Well, then there are
And so that's where I think we should stay focused.
then I think this has to be a work session discussion on what exactly was in the bid that we are now going to consider.
All right,
And
Susan.
it has to
that's-
be
okay,
a
so
discussion
please. You
because
know
there
what?
was
Thank you. Thank you. Let's vote on.
misinformation and
Okay.
a lack of transparency when the
And-
bids
and I
when
don't-
the
and-
bid
A
went
motion.
out.
And I
A motion.
And that's a great idea. And Dan said that already.
Fine.
and I
He
and
already said that.
yes, and I think that the lack of transparency you're talking about is the fact that this plan was given to the planning board by our professionals because of what DOT put on them. So if you want to go back and forth with DOT and try to have logic, fine. We'll sit down. We'll have the meeting. That's not a problem. But you're trying to belay the point for whatever reason, and I want to move on. And there's another resolution that I want to put in here. I don't think anyone will have any objection to putting it on.
I'm sorry.
Because this is one of those things that was extra. So first, we have a. Let me get back to my agenda. That's okay. So first, we're going to have from the engineer, Route 118 and Underhill Avenue intersection improvement, 2024 bid. We want to reject that. Which is 24-8 Route 118 and Underhill Avenue intersection improvements. Can I have a motion on that?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And then
And then, just a little background, we've been having an awful lot of problems with energy rates, and ironically, we discussed a lot of energy today. There is a lawsuit that is being drawn up against Con Ed, and they're looking for, I'll read the resolution, resolved that the town hereby authorizes the hiring of Joel R. Dichter of Dichter Law LLC as a special counsel to represent the town in Con Edison's electric and gas rate case before the Public Service Commission, an amount not to exceed $5,000. So what this is a lawsuit. They are looking for 20 municipalities to sign on to it, to go against Con Edison's rate hikes for both electric and gas that are just been astronomical and out of control. It would be $5,000 per municipality unless more than 20 sign on, then it'll actually decrease.
So we'll get some representation.
We will definitely get some representation and a little better. As I read some comments, people like, why should I come and talk to NYSEG? Because they're going to just smile, say, I heard you, we're still raising your rates. But unfortunately,
He's done this before.
yeah, well, this guy's done it, so hopefully we could have that representation. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Can we have a motion to go home?
Motion to go home.
Second.
All in favor?
I want to go home.
good night, Yorktown.
Aye. Oh, thank you.